Once again, for those of you just joining, you'll be taking part in part one of a two-part webinar entitled Reflection and Projection. The webinar will start shortly with Nabab Kakni Hess. My name is Harem Heb, and I will be taking some of your questions. So if you have any burning questions in relation to today's webinar, then feel free to post them in the chat or raise your hand in order to ask the questions live. More in-depth instructions will be given shortly. Thank you all for attending.
Greetings all. Tawatak, thank you Horam Heb for the introduction. I'm just going to go live to Facebook and YouTube. One moment. Okay, welcome all. We're live on Zoom and on Facebook. My name is Nabab Kakni Hess, and I'm a student teacher of the Master Teacher, Dr. Malachi Z York, Okran. And today we're bringing to you Wu-Sabat Outformation Classes UK. We're doing Series 29, Takus Wu-Tabrus, and this is Reflection and Projection, Part 1. Okay, so I'm going to do a brief overview on who we are. There's a lot to cover in part one today. I want to get to a certain point, so it leaves us at a nice place to finish up with in part two, or for a rounded conclusion. So these top two sections is what we'll be focusing on today, and then these bottom two sections is what we'll cover in part two. So I say I'll give you some information to say how you can register for part two if you're only currently registered for part one. Okay, so let us get started. So what we're going to do first off, for those who are joining us for the first time, we are Sabaeans and our culture is Wu-Sabat. And what we're going to do is just start off the session today with some positive thinking. So this is an affirmation that in this day and time we're going to deliver in our language, Sabaic as the English translation, or Misbatia if you were saying it in Sabaic. And it's one of the great gifts that our ancestors have given us in this day and time. As you know, one of the things that was taken from us in the 400-year bondage was our own tongue, understood? And that was part of a plan to remove not only our tones to connect to natural nature, but also how we connected with our ancestors, and more importantly, how we connected with each other. And so therefore we are a people lost, or at one time lost, without a culture, without a language, and now even certainly for us here in the West, without a land to call our own. And without a land, you cannot be a nation. So this is a gift, as they showed you in that movie, Arrival, that our ancestors, as I say, have imparted upon us in this day and time. And if you want to or can do, you can learn this language once again. It's not Swahili that was given in the 60s, which was a slave trading language, a combination of Bantu and Arabic, and a language used, as say, to ferry our ancestors around the world against their will, kidnapping. Obviously, we took that because that was what we knew at this day and time. But the forces of nature, as we will learn in this class, always birth one amongst us to come and renew our culture. So when you hear these tones, it's not something to be afraid of. Some people, sometimes they hear certain things, and if it's not Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, then they run for the hills. No, this is our tones back again. So take them in. You might not understand them, and I will translate into English for proper and full understanding. Abdoe Kale Namazurat Wu Fakur Amakasamun Empar Fa'ut. Begin all prayers and thinking as a part of the all. Anuki Jawef Pa Ashuk Empar Fa'ut Wu Kale Ashuk Kawun Jawef Nea. Anuki Kasam Un Empar Fa'ut Wu Pa Fa'ut Kawun Kasam Un Em Nea. Anuki wahu ameh pa fa'ut, wu pa fa'ut kawun wahu ameh naya. Nakuk kadur najo ameh kasam un empa fa'ut, wu habub ameh mushahas un. Nakuk kado kawan kale pafef nakuk dayur jawef pa fa'ut. Ameh wase ameh dayarni kawun lakei bakoe jawef pa fa'ut. Anuki abed bi nafashni pa fa'ut kawun anuki pa fa'ut kadur nakuk kadur pa fa'ut amul nakuk amul. Okay, so let's take us back so we can understand what that is in English. So it's Pa Tak Yud, the affirmation. I'm in the divine love of all, divine love of the all expanding, and all love is in me. I am part of the all expanding, and the all expanding is a part of me. I am one as the all expanding, and the all expanding is one as me. I can succeed as part of the all expanding and fail as an individual person. I can be all that I want in the all expanding as long as my want is to stay in the all expanding. I am never by myself. The all expanding is, I am. The all expanding can, I can. The all expanding does, I do. So, as I say, that is part of our culture. That's part of our culture. As I say, learn our language and our rituals, connecting us back, as I say, with our natural tones, back with natural nature. As I say, start to get into this culture and reconnect. This is something, as I say, one must embrace, because we must work on our esoteric or spiritual side as well as our physical side, and we'll get into that a little bit today. And obviously in the last classes, in the breath parts 1 and 2, where the last class is again just us setting the record straight or pointing you in the right direction to tackle what, or restoring a very important aspect of the breath side or the health side of our culture, and one which is not really well promoted in the West. So, just if you're joining us for Zoom for the first time, just a little bit of instruction along the platform. So, if you've got any messages that are not questions and you just want to place those in the chat, they could be just comments, anything, support, feedback, whatever you choose to say. Please select panelists and all participants, so it's just in the public chat, so that people necessarily don't repeat the same things over and over again. So you can place that in the chat. There's two ways to ask questions, so let's just move this along. So if you've got a question for myself, then basically what you need to do is simply raise your hand, and then what will happen is you'll get this nice message saying that the host would like to unmute you. You simply unmute yourself and then ask your question. If you've dialed in, then it's *6 to unmute yourself and *9 to raise your hand. When you finish speaking, you can just press *6 again to mute yourself back. Yeah. Once you have unmuted yourself or you've asked a question, you just need to make sure that you mute yourself back so you don't disturb the class. Now, so those of you who are more maybe a little bit confident and are happy to speak, it's not an embarrassing thing. You quickly get over it. So don't worry about that if there's any nerves, etc., about asking questions. One thing is more important to do if you are sitting here and you're here for the first time, or you do not understand something that we are saying, please ask questions, put your hand up or whatever in order to get those answered. I'd prefer you do that and interrupt and we don't get to what we're supposed to finish today, and you leave here with an understanding of what we're talking about, than sit there in ignorance. Now, if you've also got the option of putting in a written question, so the question and answer section is there. Simply put in a written question, and then periodically, I say we'll stop and I say that the moderators or facilitators will ask those questions on your behalf. So either way, whether you want to do it written or want to come verbal, you get your questions answered today. So whilst I may be speaking a lot, that doesn't mean this is still a question and answer session. It just happens to be on a specific topic. Yeah, many years ago, we used to have, and still do today really, had open question and answer sessions where we were almost like the black Google Chrome, and people expected us to answer questions in any subject. We package it and give them an answer that correlated to their belief system. Many years the master teacher said, no, we're not doing that no more. Basically, you come into classes prepared. So when we're dealing with a subject, as I say, we are coming into those. So basically, question on the subject. We are relatively flexible. So if it's within the boundaries of what we're speaking about today and doesn't veer us off too far in a different direction, because as people may be familiar with us, the master teacher has written well over 1,000 books. So our doctrine is vast in terms of knowledge and information that can be expressed or taught. So as I say, to make sure that you come out with something specific, or you've learned something. That's why we keep the classes within a certain subject sphere. In but it doesn't mean we can't answer any questions that you may have that, say, relate to the subject we're talking about. Okay, so what we will be doing at certain points today, we haven't got as many as last week, but we're doing some poll questions. So we'll use polls, just a couple of recap quizzes to keep you interactive. So pay attention. This is a class, so should either be with a pen and paper or some kind of device to take notes so that you're able to go away and do your own individual research. So you'll see those poll questions come up periodically. I'm just going to run one now just to test that you're paying attention and you're awake out there. So let's launch this question. I'll give you a minute to answer that. See how you feel about that. No right or wrong answer, he says. So simply test that by pressing an answer just to see if it's working for you. Yeah, you should be able to view those questions on the screen right now. I'll give you 1 minute to answer that question. question answering also is anonymous, so we're not tracking who's giving what answers. So again, feel comfortable to put whatever you feel is the right answer. Okay, so I'm going to end that polling now, and as you can see, if I share those results, you can see that appear on your screen. Yeah, so before you decide to answer that, there's more people on the call than that, but obviously get yourself comfortable. So I'm saying no religion. Okay, now I'll just run these other polls so that you can just test that your sound is working, okay? Stop doing that. So, launching poll number 1. Can you hear my voice over the background music okay? So I prefer everybody to answer on this one. Should be nice and quick. So can you hear my voice over the music okay? Right, I'm hoping we've just got shy people in the room, because only 3 people responded. We haven't got a technical problem. If there is a technical problem, please just let us know in the chat. So I'm going to end that polling now. And then the second one is just to say, can you see the screen okay? So can you see the screen and the presentation okay? Excellent. So it seems the majority of people can see that screen okay. So again, I'm going to end that polling. Right, I can see a hand raised. Is there a question that somebody wants to ask before I move on? Horemheb, is there a question?
I can see a raised hand. Jennifer, was there a question you needed to ask? You can speak now. Jennifer, did you mean to raise your hand?
Yeah, I'm getting an error when trying to submit my answers.
Ah, okay. Okay, Horemheb, can you just liaise with Jennifer in the chat just to see what the problem might be?
All right.
Okay, appreciate that. Thanks, Jennifer, for the feedback.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Okay. So no problem. Okay. So moving back to where we are at. Let's just see here. Right, so quick introduction. So got a lot to get through today. So for those joining us for the first time, who is the master teacher? Well, I think if you're joining any organisation or you're receiving information from an organisation, you should do some research on the founder, on the history of that organisation, to find out what the person who is writing books, etc., what is their opinion, viewpoint, belief system, so on and so forth, because it affects the way a person defines words. So if you were picking up a dictionary, which they don't teach you in this society to do, you're supposed to do a research on the author of the dictionary, because it's going to impact the way they define, as I say, the language. Yeah, so a person, for example, can use the word God, but if they're a Christian and a Hindu, have a very different interpretation of, what that is, but they both would use the same word, God. So this is why, certainly in this day and time, we need to recover back that mindset, that interrogating, questioning mindset. And it doesn't just apply to people who tell you to question, it applies to everything that you you do. And obviously that can be quite difficult and tiring, living in a certain society. But as I say, it's getting that mindset back again, which I say our ancestors had in abundance when we were in our, as I say, living in our supreme state and in our supreme mind. So Dr. Malachi Zadok Kabina York Okran, born in Takoradi, Ghana, 1945, June 26, and he was born to Mary Abba Akran York, also known as Fatima. She was born March 10th, 1929, and she's crossed over now, so is one of our Salafu or ancestors, or Muslafu ancestors, who are able to assist us from the other side. Arguably one of the greatest women born in the last 6,000 years. And as I say, any leader, teacher, so on and so forth, look at who their mother is, obviously look at who their father is, start paying attention, particularly to the women, because with the patriarchal systems of monotheism, the role of the woman was downplayed, you understand, because those sitting behind the forces and sources that wrote our Torah, or their Torah, the Bible and the Quran, etc., as you know, and then we'll cover this more in part 2, but they made God a he as opposed to an it or even a she. Understood? So the role of women has been downplayed. Even when you look at books like Genesis, you say such and such begat, and it's all male names. No disrespect. A male doesn't begat anybody. A woman begats. Understood? And if the deities of the Bible didn't understand that, then we have a serious problem, because the rules of nature are saying something completely different. But you can imagine if a man wrote it and he didn't like or didn't respect women, then they would record all of the male names and not all of the female names, if the book is true. Unproven stories as to yet, not to offend anybody's sensibilities, but these are the things you have to start to re-look or respect. Respect means to look again. So these are the things we have to re-look at. We were always a matriarchal society, and this is linking in with natural nature. So we'll be touching upon this more in today's class. So Mary Abba Akran York, also known as Fatima. In fact, I'm going to replace or update this picture as well, because she's got a beautiful picture with her in a ancient Egyptian attire, and so we need to really show the respect to show her in that form as well. So his father, Al-Hadi Abdul Rahman Al-Mahdi, again, great genes here from the royal family out of Sudan, linked to Muhammad Ahmad Al-Mahdi of the Sudan. I'll show his picture in a second, but born 1845. His father was actually assassinated in 1970, unfortunately, so did not necessarily able to fill his full potential maybe in his physical life, as his life was sadly taken. But the two of them coming together has birthed obviously one of the most prolific authors that certainly we've seen this century, and tailored doctrine brought to those of who are black and anybody else who is willing and prepared to listen, as well as respect our culture. So you see at the top there, this is Sayyid Muhammad Ahmad Al-Mahdi of the Sudan, from, let's say, the Dongolawi tribe, which is Napata. So this is pre-dynastic ancient Egypt. So pre-dynastic Egypt. This is where he's from, Napata. We did a class previously, so look out for that, I think, in on our YouTube channel, which was where they tried to separate Black Egypt and other Egypt. The thing that we're talking about here, there is no such delineation or separation. It was all us. And in some of the regions, some people just happened to mix in with us, which may have watered down the features, but that wasn't until much later down the line. So, but what happens is that they send artists and other, under the guise of archaeologists, and they do this thing called antiquing. And antiquing is where they take images on the walls of ancient Egypt or Africa, and they start to make those features more aquiline, lighten the skin colors, so on and so forth, trying to erase us out of our story. Understood? But the reality of the situation is that our records are not just on the walls, or the monuments that they've built, they are in our DNA, our RNA, they're in our genes. Yeah, held by our women, in the sense, who carry that legacy of the mitochondrial DNA. So you can't erase us by erasing us out of our story, because the children being born today just simply will draw new drawings. We'll build new buildings. We'll make new art to reflect our culture in this day and time. So Napata, or that connection back to that. And the Mahdi, if you study his story or his legacy, was a significant, as I say, military and spiritual master, understood, who helped drive the British and the Turks out of Africa. Let's say a number of incursions by Europeans who had much superior technology than we had as Africans, but their, as I say, spears, stones, and spiritual works helped them to win those wars and, to say, drive the British and the Turks out of Africa at that particular time. So this is the master teacher, age 25, or who we call the master teacher. He may not be the master teacher to you, but master teacher to us as students who are teaching. And when we say master teacher, is because we're saying he's a master at teaching. And so specifically sent in this day and time to break what we refer to as the spell of ignorance, and so to bring us back, as I say, to who and what we are in terms of the renewal of our story, which happens every 25, some say 24,000 years. Now, in our culture, you don't see first world people, indigenous people, digging up the bones of their ancestors. We make this point a lot in the introduction. You don't see them digging up the bones of their ancestors to find out what took place in the past. So it must have had a different system, yeah, that allows us, because human beings are very forgetful. Let's be honest. You understand? Probably some people even forget how to use a Zoom platform, and I only mentioned it about 5 minutes ago. So the reality of the situation is we need continuous reminder. When you look at that word remind, it's mind is two things, isn't it? So somebody's trying to reconnect, yeah, your mind to things that we have forgotten. So as a race, forcibly, in our instances, certainly in the last 400 years, we were forcibly disconnected, yeah, by the adverse forces, particularly the Mukasu or the Caucasians, mixing in with our genes, understood, which has thrown our connection off, yeah, so we're out of line with our natural frequency, or the radio station that is broadcasting the Outformation coming to us in the form of information that we connect to, understood, tells us the right places where to be, just like the in nature you see certain animals or other species, they know what time, what season it is to do certain things and instructions. In a similar way, we are, all races are connected. We'll get into that, say, a little bit later. And so we need realigning. Yeah, so in our culture, going back prehistory, that individual was known as an Amun Nubi Ra'akta, yeah, or Amun Nabab Ra'akta. And that's a vehicle or a vessel that is birthed into the world that your ancestors, let's say, convey certain information through to restore back our story in this day and time and transform you from mortals back into deities again. Yeah, you've been taught that you are men and women. I say taught. Yeah, but we are supreme beings, truth be known. We are the very gods that they are worshipping in their Bible, and that may sit uncomfortable and in their Quran. That may sit uncomfortably with some, but the reality of the situation is, and this is all the controversy with the Black Lives discussion, all these different things going on at the moment, because the world doesn't want to accept, according to their Bible, yeah, honor your mother and father so your days will be long, and right, you know the rest. So, but the world doesn't want to respect its mother and father by race, i.e. the black race. Yeah, so their time will expire. Which is what we see going on right now, you know what I'm saying, before your very eyes, yeah, for those who know. But the situation as we see it is that our ancestors never really left us, and the situation we find ourselves in, we're in this situation not for what we have done, but rather for what we have failed to do. We have failed in this instance to develop ourselves and reconnect us back with the forces and sources of power that aid us under the false one God concept teachings. And I make this point not to, as I say, attack anybody's religion. Understood? Many years were spent, as I say, correcting or setting the record straight in these various different schools of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam to make them right for us. But you have to understand how the rules of natural nature mean that you can't choose your religion. You have to basically your religion is connected to your genetics, understood? And your genetics are connected to the etheric side, which connects us to our ancestors. And all of that is pre-programmed in nature. So in our system, as I say, our ancestors are born in physically because they have to relearn or what their children are like in this day and time, and a doctrine has to be designed, as I say, to fit then our nature in this day and time. Hence why you have this individual referred to as Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn or Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, incarnated into the master teacher, and various ancestors speaking through this vehicle or vessel. The Hindus have a similar concept referred to as avatar. In Islam, they say Ila Mutajasid, various different titles. In our culture, it's referred to as Aman Nababaraya Ahakta. Understood? And in this day and time, I've broken this down in previous classes, so please go to our YouTube channel to get more information on that. But we're now, as I say, starting to uncover what is referred to as the Safaf script. The Safaf, not hieroglyphs, the Safaf script. To understand now, to reread what our ancestors recorded on the walls in ancient Egypt, and they were recorded on the walls so they would stand and last the test of time. Understood? But we don't just rely on that. We rely on, as I say, the mental reservoir, the ancestral forces coming back around again to renew our story. The difference is that, as I say, we didn't recognize that because the word, we were in the Bible mindset, we didn't know that the word angel came from the Greek word angelos, and it meant messenger. So we didn't see Marcus Garvey as an angel, because in our mind, which we're going to be talking about today in this reflection and projection, in our mind, the word angel is associated with a white man with wings on their back. So we didn't know or had the mind to even question and look up and say, what does the word angel mean? Because it's not an English word. Oh, the word angelos, means messenger. Okay, so anybody who carries a message is an angel. So many messages we may have missed because the religious mindset and the religious thinking causes us not to see the simple messages of certain things in front of us. And so when we talk about Dr. Malachi Z, or the master teacher, he is coming in a long line of teachers, each coming with a piece of the puzzle to prepare us for the day and time that we're in right now. 1970, as you see on the slide, symbolized the opening of the seventh seal, which was the unveiling of what they call the 7 major scriptures. And so I'm not going to go through all these because we've covered them in many sessions before, but it was to break that mindset in the first 30 years, because each elder that incarnates is given an hour, or symbolically 1 hour, which is 60 years. So from 1970, which was the incoming of something referred to as the sun cycle, and the ending of the moon cycle, and where all false things must perish and truth must prevail. You understand? So in that first half an hour, you learn what is referred to in ancient Egypt as the lesser mysteries. The baby teachings. That's what your religion is. So some people say the Bible means basic information before you leave Earth. That's what some people say. So some basic teachings there. That's what it would have been looked at and considered as. Each one of them has an esoteric element or side of it. But then that teaching uncovered the fact that the various beings, as you would have it, sitting in the seats Overstood, yeah, for using modern day terminology are nothing more than extraterrestrials of the Sumerian doctrine, because the Quran, the Bible, and the Torah are copies of the Sumerian tablets, which they never taught you this in school. About the Gilgamesh epics, where there's a flood story in the sand, where Noah is mentioned, but he's called Utnapishtim. Yeah, they never taught you about characters like Enki, Enlil, and say whose names, or Tammuz, who find mentioned in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 8, I think verse 13. Understood? So these various different characters whose names are in the Bible, if you do your research, but they never shared this with you in school and in the churches and so on and so forth. So you can walk back and see, well, who is sitting in the seat in these various different positions. We use the term God, we use the term, but then assume that God is Lord God, Most High, Almighty. All these are different terms and terminologies, but like in an army, a sergeant is a sergeant. You understand? That's different to a colonel, that's different to a captain, it's different to a field general. These are different positions within a hierarchy. So there was a hierarchy going on, but no one told you that. So we spent a lot of time having to learn in those first 30 years, they say, taking a long walk on a short path to uncover that spell that caused us not to think, have belief and faith. Now, we don't have a problem with belief and faith, but we do have a problem when you can find facts. Because belief is ignorance, it's the acceptance of things that you don't know to be true. So why would you accept belief when you can know? Belief infers doubt, knowing gives you confidence. So when we can know, this is why we seek, obviously, the best knowledge, which is facts. The new spirituality in this day and time is to know things. You should not base your soul on faith and belief, and then wait until you're dead to find out if what they were teaching you all this time is really true. Now, based on his story and what's happened to our people, you can't rely on his translation. Let's be honest, you can't rely on their translation for black people. Just being honest. No, I'm not being racist, I'm being honest. Yeah, he's proven himself time and time again to be the liar of liars, and that's what they even say in their Bible. Yeah, go and look it up. Yeah, John chapter 8. Look at John chapter 8 and John chapter 10. They're telling you, a liar of liars. Nothing they say about us you can even believe or stand or have a foundation on. Yeah, because of the mindset that sat behind it, like we touched upon in the last class, simply the hate by knocking off the noses of our ancestors so that you can't see, that whatever, Tyrone, Michelle, Kwabena down the road, are those pharaohs, are connected to those great ancestors, great scientists, great engineers, just because of hate. It didn't fit their narrative that black people were supposed to be monkeys and of lesser intelligence than them. And rather than correct it, now they know the truth, they've left those systems in place to maintain dominant power over other races. But it's all fake. And they only maintain their dominance now through the media and the television. Yeah, which is what many of us, let's be honest, when we were growing up, have been damaged by. And still now, psychologically, are having to correct these issues. And religion is one of the biggest issues for our people. One of the biggest issues. Yeah, because it's art masquerading as fact. It was a program, I think this week was watching on GMTV, where a white female artist had painted a black Jesus. If anybody saw it on GMTV or this week on ITV, but white was painting a black Jesus. That Jesus now should be black, but he was sitting with a whole heap of white disciples. So the reality is we're supposed to be happy now that, okay, they're painting Jesus as black. The issue for you now in this day and time, in this mindset, is does Jesus exist? It's not what color he was. It's does he exist first? Is the story true? before I put my soul into it. Not a black Jesus. And she suffered from the same mindset as everybody else. When you look at the picture of the Last Supper, why are they all facing forward? If they're in a Last Supper around a table, then you should see half of them's back. They're looking like they're posing for a photo. And these images, as I say, have stamped themselves in the minds of our people, but they're factually, there's a problem with it. They're not thinking on it. It just don't look right. And that picture this week, what she drew, showed you in real time, well, that's her imagination being put there on the world. Art masquerading as fact, killing human development. Yeah, racism is a cancer in human society today, or for the human race, is a cancer. Yeah, and we're still suffering from it to get over it. So part of it, let's say, all embedded in the stuff that we're suffering from. Remember, in their book, Revelation chapter 10, the mystery of God should be finished. So they are making this prophecy or prediction that what was sitting in the seat, you would understand it, understood, know what it is, and in our case, know exactly what it is, and redirect our energy back to where it's supposed to be. Yeah, not in any language, in culture, rituals, so on and so forth. Otherwise, it's idol worship to us. I-D-L-E, not I-D-O-N-E. I-D-O-L, excuse me. I-D-L-E, idol worship. You're putting your energy into nothingness. And this is why the results are not right. I say many times we are dialing the wrong telephone number. That's why we said you're not in this situation for what you've done, but for rather what we have failed to do. Failed to realign ourselves with natural nature, failed to realign ourselves with our own spiritual doctrine, which unifies us mentally, and then the physical unity follows. There's a lot of initiatives and various different things. Yes, black people come together in unity, etc., different organizations. And of course, yes, if someone's pointing a gun at you, you're not going to focus on the different uniforms you're wearing. Your focus is going to be on the gun. But at a certain point, we have to realize that you cannot be first place playing second fiddle in somebody else's religion. Yeah, you cannot optimize yourself, yeah, under somebody else's rule. And why should you? When you can have direct access, direct connection. Yeah, why should my spirituality must go through a white pastor? Why should a white pastor marry me and the woman that I want to spend the rest of my life with, or bless our children, so on and so forth? Why does it have to be that way of doing things? When we look back and we see how it's supposed to be formed, men didn't even perform marriage ceremonies in ancient times. Women perform marriage ceremonies because it's tying back into natural nature. If you understand about mitochondrial DNA, about hermaphrodites and hermaphrodites, where we came from before we became gender life forms as male and female, we came from hermaphrodites and hermaphrodites, which the woman represents today. She was able to have children without the aid of a man, bringing the natural genes back together again. So women performed the spiritual ceremonies and rituals to marry because she's still connected to natural nature in the universe via way of her menstrual cycle. It's determined by cosmology, the movement of certain planetary bodies in relation to the Earth. So it makes sense, yeah? Because she's connected spiritually. How can a white man connect you spiritually when you're vibrating at 66% higher than he could ever even reach? By way of your color of your skin, your melanin. How can he connect you? It doesn't make sense. Not me being racist, I'm just saying it's fact. It doesn't vibrate high enough. That's why his color is the way it is, and why your color is the way it is. Which one is closer to the blackness of space? So which is vibrating higher in energy terms? These are the facts that have to be uncovered, the ignorance that we have been suffering from as a people. and why, as I say, this resurrecting and our teacher called Malachi Z York is necessary in this day and time to bring the actual facts back to you as a people. So let's fly through this because we've got a lot to get through today. Let's just hold on 1 second. So this Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, as I say, the female forces, you see it underlined there, always, as I say, at this day and time, birthed this being from amongst us, as I say, to reveal the hidden past, inform the changing present, so that we can take control of the ruling future. We have rules that have to be understood. Under characteristics of the spell that we were suffering from, or that we've been under, and the characteristics of that is spiritual ignorance and racial blindness. So we don't know how the universe works, or universes work in their many different forms. We don't know the rules. And what we're left with in this society is laws, man-made laws oftentimes, which go against natural nature. So we have rules and they have laws. And because they know that the rules of nature, yes, to bind the two things together, they create the rule of law. But we have to understand through that spiritual ignorance those rules and how they apply to the many different behaviors, because we picked up a lot of different beliefs, a lot of different opinions or whatever. But do we understand the consequences of all of our actions, as deities incarnate? Okay, so let's just touch on this slide for a second. So the science that we're dealing with here is called Wu-Sabat, and to keep it simple, it's dealing with factual information, or animism. And animism is dealing with the fact that we have the viewpoint that all our natural phenomena or us descend from a soul or energy first before we manifested into the physical. So these are things that we have to get back to and understand. It says in Wu-Sabat you deal with natural universe science, like scientific information. Animism, that is all natural phenomena by Ba'ah, soul, that which is real in Fatir, nature and your environment. So we come from an energy point of view first. And so as we go through this class, we're going to make this even more clear, so that you understand what we're dealing with. It's not an abstract concept set, it's part of your being. Ontologist, science of the essence of being. Animist, the supernatural, is to say that the very natural, not spookism, is natural nature, its highest and lowest points within existence. So within this particular realm or physical realm, we are a 9 aspect being, or have 9 principles to us, which we'll get into a bit later. But the 2 points are birth and death. So Dud and Mawat. So the 2 points for us, at least in this particular realm, but that's not the only point. Death is a doorway for us, but we exist at this point between those 2 points. But here we're saying past and present and future are all then, or then, now, then. So when we talk about time, the real time is now. But time is now because where is yesterday gone? Yesterday is still out there. We just ain't calling it yesterday. You know what I mean? Insofar as we don't perceive to experience yesterday. The same way tomorrow is already there. We just haven't arrived at that point yet because of how we say it in the language. So all of that is now. So you have multiple thens, then of the past, and obviously thens going forward, which obviously is a past, isn't it? You can jump back by way of your 3D holographic brain. You can jump back by way of your memory. And so I remember what it was like to be 9 years old or whatever. That is a then within now. So this is what we really mean by past, present and future when we're talking about it's all now. So in fact, supernatural in Wu-Sabat means the higher or highest Saham power, and black powers called Hamem Sha'ad. Black magic of natural nature or of nature, not something of white powers called Sha'ad, white magic. So the Mukasu or the Caucasus have done a great job You understand? Of convincing you that black magic is evil, negative, or something you have not dealing with. Now, black magic got nothing to do with sacrificing chickens and all this different type of foolishness. That whoever's doing that or requires a blood sacrifice, which we never linked certain behaviors with the religion. So they pointed out and said, oh, look, they're savages. They're cutting the throats of chickens. They're doing this. While in the Bible, what was their God doing? Were they not sacrificing? Was the Levitical priests not sacrificing animals on altars, cutting the throats in Islam? Do they not have a halal where they cut the throats of animals, let blood let in to empower their deity forces? Sacrificing human beings as well as animals. But they look at a chicken and say, oh, that's someone cutting a chicken, that's black magic. So what were they doing then? If that's black magic. Black magic, that's not even dealing with black magic. Black magic is when nature or the force of nature work for you when you are black. Yeah, our higher forces and higher ancestors, if you think about the sun, what are you sacrificing to get solar energy? What are you sacrificing to get the 5 elements? Yeah, air, water, wind. So air, water, fire, understand? Earth, understood? Love. What are we sacrificing? Do we have to sacrifice any blood to get air that we breathe? No, we don't. It's inherent in the system. That's what we should be connected to, showing you the power of our ancestors. Suns are self-regenerating. Yes, that which birthed them is also that which they produce. And that's what we need to be tying back into, is nature. They can't fight against that. There's no technology right now in the world that can protect anybody from coronavirus. Right now. So this is black magic, which we need to tap back into, the magic that works for us. White magic is when you worship, when you are black and they have you worshiping a white Jesus. That's white magic, which is more detrimental for you. So we're touching upon a number of issues today, or touched upon a few, and we have a statement here: no one wins the race in racism, because as I say, we are dealing with have to have discussions about genes and genetics, and when you're doing that, have to have mature people in the room. Yeah, so we have to have our own stuff. Yeah, and it's sad to say, certainly when you're living in the Western society, we've done our best to make certain things work and continue to do our best to make certain things work. But the reality of the situation is, we have to have our own stuff. You can't be optimized, you can't fulfill your potential living in the image and after the likeness of somebody else. That goes for men, that goes for women, and more importantly, it goes for the children. Yeah, because we wasn't the cause of the problem. We wasn't the ones who looked in the mirror and felt we were ugly. Somebody pointed that out to us and said we were ugly. And then the problem started while we was minding our own business. And the reality is, Africa may have its problems, the Caribbean may have its problems and issues or whatever, but if everybody looks like you, then racism is not an issue. And it's only when you go back there, certainly living here for a long time, that you look at the psychological impact and damage that racism has had on your, not only your physical, but your esoteric potential. Yeah, damaged for life, not damaged, damaged for life. Yeah, only something that now you can see the importance of not only having a culture, but you need to be in the right environment. And if you understand how the human body works, you know that how we are impacted by environment, positively and negatively. Okay, so let's get in some of the stuff that we got to speak about today. And I say, if there's any questions, please put your hands up and ask. Now, listen to this statement here. We've read it a few times. We're going to go a bit deeper today. So it said, in the beginning, nothing proceeded. In the middle, nothing stays still. In the end, nothing is after. It is not about what you accept or what you become. It was and always will be who you are. So we're getting back to the who, not the what. But look at what the consistency, if you read it, it said, in the beginning, nothing proceeded. In the middle, nothing stays still. In the end, nothing is after. What is nothing? It's a question we're going to leave there for you to think about. What is nothing? Does nothing mean non-existence? Because whatever this is the same as this. We become a what? Yeah, that's been created. There's other fancy terms now, isn't there, today? Imposter syndrome and different things of this nature. This is the what that's been created in this society, not being real. The you that you pretend to be and the real you. So how much have we had to give up by not operating off of our souls? Whether it's in our job, you understand, in certain environments where we're not reacting, we're dumbing ourselves down. How much have we had to, of ourselves, have we had to give up to survive in this society and not be who you really are? And even that has been compromised in the absence of quality information. Yeah, to tell you exactly what you are, what you're supposed to be. What am I developing myself to become? What am I growing into? And how do I cultivate that to ensure best success? And the word success ties into succeed, which ties into the fact of having children, isn't it? Progeny. Continue our lineage and line. So nothing to do with how much money a person's got, etc. It's tied into our genealogy. So as long as children are being born, there's still, as they say, hope, or there's still solutions to the problems that we're facing. Yeah, so it's all about the who as opposed to the what. Now I'm gonna press through all of this. Are there any questions? Well, I'll move on to this next bit.
No questions so far.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna get into the start of the class. Otherwise, I have a tendency to rabble on a bit, as you can hear. Right. Okay. So, just a reality for us. Yeah? It says an initiation is like a birth. The key to overstanding is to understand that each person who is born of someone who themselves is born of someone. So, this is the reality we have to accept. You understand, of our divinity. This is how it works. Yeah, so it's not about leapfrogging all the way to some unseen, unknown spirit force. The power of divinity has come through in a successional way for our life form. Yes, and you would not be here if it wasn't for your parents. When we talk about sound right reasoning, or that reasoning aspect, reasoning meaning to the fact that if you're standing and you look at yourself here in the mirror, you must have had a mother and father, because we're looking at the sum, the result, the output of them two coming together. So for all intents and purposes, that is your God or gods. Whether they were good people, bad people or not, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. And how many children don't make it for medical reasons? How many children don't make it for reasons that they've been terminated? So it's not an easy process necessarily, just because technology's improved. It's not an easy process to be born. There's a lot of pitfalls, hurdles or whatever to overcome. You understand? And the baby, generally speaking, if it's born healthy, is born defect-free oftentimes. You understand? But the process starts from even before the child is obviously born. And we're now learning, as we're able to peer into the darkness now, we're learning how important that pregnancy is, or when we're carrying a child, when we are imported into the womb. Yeah, how important that process is. Not respected, it's being respected a little bit, but not enough. Which is why it's best to plan, isn't it? Most babies, let's be honest, probably myself included, I'm not excluding myself from the group, but most babies are not born planned. We're figuring it out. Understood? Yeah, accidents. Yeah, so we're unprepared. Yeah, figure it out. You have to work it through. But when you have the right knowledge and knowing how important the power of sex is, then we have to start to think about making different choices. Maybe not our generation in our lifetime, but for future generations, we have to create the environments where the output of that is star children. When two black people came together, male and female, female, male, came together, the output was star children, not a black person. Star children. Sons incarnate. And this is what this is making reference to. Yeah, that we are descendants of stars. Yeah, we are star children. Yeah, and our ancestors, who the Tamarayans or the ancient Egyptians referred to as the Natharu, the word means overseers. Yes, they are sons. Yeah, that's one of the images that they took away from you, or of that reality, or one of their manifestation of their power is sons. Yeah, those balls of gases. Now, they are intelligent thinking. So suns are planets with a brain and blood. You have intelligent thinking. You have a sun system in your, or solar system in your own body. It's referred to as a solar plexus. And if you was at last month's class, you learned that now they're understanding that, or now scientists are understanding today, that suns have intelligence, they have a conscience, they're making decisions. Yeah? In fact, the sun within you, in that solar plexus, is now being referred to as the abdominal brain. So you, as black people, yeah, are a universe, and you have an intelligent sun or several different brains inside your body, not just at the top of your head. Understood. So this is coming into the reality of who and what we're supposed to be. And stars, as I say, I've said it many times in this class before, they want you to worship fake stars out of the place called Hollywood. And how emotional energy on YouTube and different things, you know how it is. You can be working a day, watch YouTube, you be on that thing 8 hours a day, living your life vicariously through somebody else's life, and not fixing and putting the energy into your own issues that you've got in life. Diverting your emotional energy away from where it should be, focused inward as opposed to outward. So we are sons. That is why we're referred to as the descendants, because we descended down from that energy or gaseous state. We are the terrestrial representation of the sun. And so when you breathe on your hand, you feel heat. Yeah. So, as saying here, in the beginning were the sons, and the sons are within Fatir al-Fatah, natural nature. And the sons are natural nature. The sons, the true Kakabat stars, are Parnatharu, the overseers, who grew absolute natural nature from and of omniverse all into universe, the all. So, as we said again in this class many times, but repetition is good. Universes come from dual verses come from triverses, and triverses come from multiverses. And when you say everything, you say omniverse. Yeah, we didn't talk about the Most High, God, and all these different terminologies. We talked about Fa'ut, as we talked about in Partakyud, the affirmation. Fa'ut, all, existence. Even because people talk about God and the Creator, created this, created that, but to exist first. Existence comes before creation. Yeah, so we are all part of existence, or all, and you can't define it. Yeah, because you're talking about all energy, all power, all elements. all love, all existing everywhere that could be existing anywhere, all is. You cannot define it. It's not unknowable, but you can't define it. Because it would limit it. All is, I am. And here, omniverse all into the all, because we have the same characteristics. Yeah, your mother was the all, and then when we were born, the all is, it became the I am. Hence she has that blackness in her womb, some refer to as triple darkness, making reference to the 3 trimesters of 3 months that we go through before we're born. Yeah, she was all while you was in the womb, because she didn't know anything outside of the womb. But when you was born and you saw how the minute you looked back and you looked up at your mother's eyes with a nipple in your mouth getting your food, yes, that was because now she's not all. She is the all within all, as you are the all within all. Understood? So this is our reality, yes, of who and what we are. Let me stand time. Let me just put some background noise there. So the sons have bigger brothers and sisters, yeah. And so this is our reality of who and what we are. Tremendous in size, tremendously powerful, yeah. And obviously you'll see throughout our culture, as I say, that recognized and acknowledged by our people. Yeah, and the European turned the S-U-N son into the S-O-N son. Same sound, isn't it, phonetically? And then they manifested their God into the physical and then killed him to prove that they were greater than God. That's the mindset. You understand? So their thing, which is a dog mindset, isn't it? It's a canine mindset. Top dog. So not to work with, not to share, hand over power, respect your ancestors' legacy. No, kill my mother and father, then I become the top dog. I become the head person in charge. Understood? That's the mindset. It's a canine mindset, which we need to alleviate ourselves from and get back to who and what we are. We work from the center outwards. Like you see the sun working as part of a solar system. Now, our ancestors were referred to as the Natharu, overseers, where they get the English word nature from. And the Safaf, or the hieroglyph symbol, was 3 flags. Yeah, and so those 3 flags symbolize 3 nines. And so when you look at the number 9, so when we look at our number system today, you see 1 to 9, and then we get a combination of 1 and 0 as 10, and then it replicates those numbers again. So the highest number in Wu-Sabat is 9, understood? And so you see those 3 flags symbolize 3 nines. Out of the perfect number, as you see in there, which is 1,000. So if you look at our hair texture in its natural state, when the heat's applied to it, it curls up into a 9, like a baby's in the womb. It's balled up like a 9, yeah, 9 months to birth a child, so on and so forth. So 9, the 1,000 is a perfect number because when that hair follicle curled right back into itself, we were bald or hairless. Yes, just like we were when we was in the womb, hairless, yeah, or in the waters of this planet. We were hairless, yeah, and so when you're turning the 9 back in, it becomes, remember, it's coming back into that energy state. We were energy before we manifested into the physical, and our hair, remember, acts like an antenna connecting us, as I say, to pick up cosmic energy, as well as obviously protecting certain vital parts of us, but it is an antenna. Understood? And so the number 1,000 was the perfect number, or perfect unity, because it symbolized different races. Yeah, so we were representatives of 9 to 9th power of 9, yeah, as a people, and it represented our mental capacity. Yes, the Dravidians or Hindus or Mongoloids represent 666, out of 1,000. And the Caucasoid represented 333 out of 1,000. Yeah, think of our mental capacity. Now, some who are familiar with the doctrine know that when their ancestors, the Anunnaki and the Pleiadians, created them, they used 3 animals in particular: the Homo simian, the Homo canine, and the Homo porcine. Yeah, and on the first chromosome, DUF 1220. Look it up. Yeah, so as a result of that, we see that most Caucasian males can't evolve past the age of 13. This is why in our society today is full of sports and games being played. Gameplay. Yeah, dominated by sports. These are games. Yeah, because they can't evolve past the age of 13 because of the way in which their ancestors created them. Understood? So the mental capacity is lower than that of other races. And if equal opportunity is provided, those races will always exceed the Mukasu. It's only by way of the television that their supremacy and cinema, their supremacy reigns. Now, most people on the planet, truth be told, are not even Caucasian. Most people on the planet who even you think look Caucasian, if they have one drop of our blood or genes within them, that makes them part of our family. There's the majority. That's how strong and powerful our divine genes are. But racism will have them thinking otherwise. So it is what it is. You understand? If it was really, we were dealing with everything called being equal and racism not existing, we would be the majority, not the minority. A term which we should drop, to be honest, because certainly in this society, minors or minority, understood, is associated with children. And in this society, they say what? Children should be seen and not what? So whenever you try to speak or say anything, they basically ignore what you say unless a white man says it for you. Yeah, so these terms, we should start to drop them and call them and refer to ourselves as who we are by race. Yeah, when you refer to our names, it ties you into who we are genetically as a people. Yeah, the word Nigeria has the word Niger or black in there. Sudan means land of the two blacks, describing who the people are, what they look like. You do that with any of the European country names and find where it takes you. All myths, legends, etc., because he doesn't want you to know where they really came from. Anyway, 1,000 is a perfect number, tying into Natharu, and as you see, they play a lot of games in the UK. We've got international listeners, but in the UK, the number to dial the police or the emergency services is 999. So if you think you don't know who we are and our morology and our culture, you're fooling yourself. So 9 times 9, 27. 9 is a cycle or circle, and that is one of the Natharu's favorite shapes in terms of creation. The Or also tying into the egg. Yes, that circle. And ties into our original, or one of our ancestral original planets of Razak or Marzak in the 19th galaxy. We happen to be in the 18th galaxy. And those symbols or circles tie into what is necessary for existence. You see, there's space, material or matter, and time. They're 3 in one concept. You cannot have existence without these 3 principles: space, matter, and time. Yeah, necessary for existence. Can't have existence without those 3. So that's why they refer to them as the 3-in-1 principle. As you see there, in perfect unity, they represent or are shown in 1,000. I've got the symbol of 1,000 in front of me. One moment. I haven't got the symbol in front of me of 1,000, but it's called Ba'h Sashan. Yeah, well, maybe next month I'll show that. Ba'h Sashan. And it's a symbol basically of a lotus flower tying into that. Understood? The birth of the sun out of existence, you understand? Or a tumray out of that darkness, the raising sun, or us being birthed or born out of the darkness. So symbolizing these three suns, and Razak is in a tri-solar system, triple sun system, and where our atom begins, that's where their existence ends. And Sirius, or the Sirius star constellation, which many of our monuments were aligned to, tying into Ashtar or Isis, who the Greeks referred to as her star constellation, that was the bridge between the 18th and the 19th galaxies. Understood? As the woman today is the bridge between the world we came from and the world we are being born into. Understood? So, let's get into today's class, reflection and projection. A bit complicated, so we need to take time. Is there any questions?
Yes, there is a question by Jean. Jean, I'm going to unmute your microphone and then you can ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Indeed. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm good. I must have put my hand up accidentally. But just to say, if you do get the chance, Nabab, at the end, you know how you mentioned about the birth of a tomb out of the darkness, and you talked about the symbol of the lotus flower. If you do get the chance to show that at the end, that would be fab.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, someone reminds me. I have a tendency to forget these things, but if you can remind me, or Ahmed, please, I will do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. There is another question.
Go ahead.
E. Seeley. Can you go over the corona and sun part mentioned earlier?
When it says go over, okay, so I think we were just mentioning the fact that basically there's no technology on the planet that can stop a virus. It's that in nature. And even by its name, it's telling you, so certain viruses, which I'm not sure if we're going to get into in today's class, may have covered that in part 2, but certain viruses are are of nature's defense system or immune system. Yes. And if you look at it, they're attacking certain individuals or races on the planet. Even the word or the way it's been named is what? Coronavirus. Corona ties into what? The outer aspect or part of the sun. Understood? Sorry, let me just mute. Noise that. Hold on, help keep it down, mate. Thank you. All right. So so when you talk about the coronavirus, it's tying into the sun. Remember, their overlords gave them a 6,000-year dominion over the planet, which was to expire, understood, at the year 2000. In 1914, excuse me, when their prophet or their last prophet came, excuse me, remember they saw an extension of time because their genes were expiring. This is why there's so much promotion of interrelation relationships right now, because they have to mix in with those with stronger genes every 7 or so years in order to progress their race. Slavery's got nothing to do with labor. It's all about blood. As coronavirus in this day and time, one of the key cures for it, or manifested cures, is the plasma within our blood, which, as you know, we were talking about this in last month's class. Yeah, about the breath, how the cells, remember, blood starts off blue, yes, and it which is deoxygenated, and then it gets its red color, and then there's a burning process which goes through where it's cleaned, yes, and it turns blue again. So we looked at the two extremes, or the symbolism of those colors, blue and red. But the yellow aspect deals with what they call the white blood cells. which are not white, they're actually yellow in color, as well as the plasma, which is yellow in color. Plasma is the key, because the hemophilia aspect, which remember what the War of the Roses was about, was the lack of what? Vitamin K in the bloodstream, 19th element, potassium, which, if my memory serves me correctly, they lack vitamin K, or the clotting factor, which meaning they were bleeding out. So they had to try and mix in with those with stronger genes to try and breed that disease out of their genealogy. Their time is expiring. Yeah, and coronavirus is one of the many things that, as I say, is eliminating them off of the planet. We are dying of coronavirus because we are in many of the frontline positions where we're exposed. We're not dying because we're susceptible to the virus. We're dying because of the environments that we're working in. We are those frontline staff, isn't it, in the NHF? We are the ones doing the cleaning jobs and menial tasks. So if your immune system's compromised, then we're going to be compromised. Yeah, so by the name of it, as I say, we're going to get into that maybe in this class today, but remember, this is an extraterrestrial agenda. Yeah, extraterrestrial agenda, which is taking place. Understood. So, extraterrestrial agenda, which is taking place. And this is what's happening right now. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question. If not, then please question further. So, when we deal with more
questions.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
This is from an anonymous attendee. Before they called us black and themselves white, what did we call ourselves, and can we identify as that again?
So it's an interesting question. I mean, we've had many names throughout the ages, but the word black in English obviously is problematic. But when we speak to it in our language, it's not always talking about the color of our skin. It's making reference to the fact of the supreme balancement, the absence of confusion. So black is not a color, it is a state. As white is not a color, it's a state. So when we're dealing with blackness, you look up at the so-called night sky or whatever, or space, I should say. Yes, that is black in color, but it's a state, a peaceful state, no confusion, or the absence of light, because light, as we saw it in ancient Mukhmatu or Egypt, was deemed to be chaos, because light or fire blinds. Blackness doesn't blind. You understand? In a sense, over time, if you stayed in darkness for a period of time, you would get not able to see or process light over time. But blackness is what you seek, is the absence of that confusion. You understand? So no, there isn't a problem with us being called black. It's black in English. Which they've made negative, understood. So, no, we were called many different names. Obviously, in this day and time, they refer to us as Musbatu, which ties into the Sabian or Sirius star constellation. And if you look at most of the buildings that our ancestors built, they were aligned with Orion and Sirius star constellation. So under a project called Project 24, our DNA, male DNA, was seeded here from the Orion star constellation, and female DNA was seeded from the Sirius star constellation, under a project called 24. Understood. So many names we were known as, but we would say Mukhmatu is what would refer to us as Egyptians, understood. Let's say Khamat, you referred to as the blackness, or Khamem in modern day Sabaean would be that language also. So we had many different names. Today we are known as Musbatu. Musbatu. Any questions?
Yes. This is from Anne. This is a little off topic. How is the Stargate supposed to open if Ba'h B'ah is still locked up? And it continues, who is Sanan Ra or Sanan Ray?
We're covering that in part 2. It's a good question. We're covering that in part 2. You understand? So basically, I think you saw his picture before the class opened, or one of his descendants, who he was 2,000 years ago as Tut Ankh Amun, who became Tut Ankh Atun. That is our Jesus. Yeah, so in this day and time, who is that? Well, we'll cover that in part 2. Yeah, so when you say Sanan Ray, remember Sanan, which was called Sananda. So Sananda was considered to be the extraterrestrial name of Jesus, correct? But when you bring that into the hereafter doctrine, Sanan Ray, what are you saying? Sanan means sun, Ray or Ra is the sun. So you're saying son of the sun, which we just covered, didn't we? Yeah, son of the sun, which is who and what we are. Yeah, and remember we touched upon in a previous class, we gave you the story, or walked through the story, isn't it, of Ashtar or Isis and Ray, and explained to you in that story how as females they were, or as a female, she felt that basically men were not ruling the planet correctly and felt that basically women were suppressed. So she sought to gain Ray's power. Ray was our most high at that time, according to the story. Yes, so she sought to gain his power, obviously, and poisoned him with his own spittle. Yes, and then they came to a deal for him to transfer part of her power to her. But under that, remember, she was to keep the secret word until all time, isn't it? But she gave it to her son, who was also then to keep it for all time. Who was her son? Her son was Hara, who they call Horus. So rendering somebody a Horus or a Hara in this day and time means that they are the keeper of what? The secret word, which Aset took from Ray. Yeah, these are there's symbolism in these stories to be uncovered. So what renders somebody a Hara or a Horus or a Sanan Ray is having that secret word. Yeah, and the Stargate, as you know, is not just connected to one individual. The Stargate requires, as you see on the star map, which they refer to as a Dendora star map, there are 4 women holding up, you understand, the heavens, so to speak, correct? You see 4 women holding up the heavens. They took that and gave you Atlas holding up the world. You see 4 women holding up the heavens in each corner, and you see 2 men or Horuses in the knelt down position, understood? Yeah, each one of them around. And if you count their hands, understood, the women's hands, because they're in the famous Egyptian position with their hands or palms pointed up. If you count all their hands, the Horuses and the women, the Isis holding up the hand, understood, or Hathor holding up the star map, the number of hands equals 24. So it's showing you that those women who are holding up have double the energy of those males that also shown on the system, yeah, which is what? Speaking about the hermaphrodites or the double-gendered individuals, women, but they have more energy, understood? Yeah, these gatekeepers have more energy than the ordinary human being. Yeah, XYX chromosome configuration, different types, 7 different types. So we'll cover that more in part 2, as you saw there with the golden children. Yeah, remember, golden children, not child, golden children. So there's more than one. You could be one. I'm speaking to you right now, and I'm honored to be speaking to you if you're a golden child. Right, any other questions?
No further questions.
All right, so this is the, I'm going to flip in between the book that we're dealing with, Reflection and Projection, and we'll jump into other aspects of the doctrine. Wu-Sabat is our foundation, and we're going to jump around just to help us understand what reflection and projection is seeking to convey. So it starts off saying, Lehe amtkum ayes munsaru kharadu empa nataru musbatu zi kawun wa kutna. So, Lehe for you all, my Munsaru, aiders, children of, the overseers, Muzbatu, so that's Sabians. It is our time. So Wakut Nuna, our time. So as we learn that language a bit more. It says, you are Khatat, body, and you are Ka'ah, spirit, solid and gas. You originated as natural Achach, ether, as Chamemnus, blackness, to Chamem, black. For in the form of reason, you are creative energy throughout, Fatir al-Fatah, natural nature in its entirety, and the word Etherian was originated from the root word ether and or burning solvent of Fatir, nature. So this throws up a few things that we need to unpack. So brother asked a good question earlier. What was one of our names? Well, one of our names was in fact we were referred to or called the ether people, isn't it? Yeah, for the way we processed. Just bear with me 1 second. I can hear some noise in the background. Okay. Apologies, just had to correct that noise there. Now, so, one of the things we were called were ether people, isn't it? And so that's where the word Ethiopia comes from. Yeah, it was the ether people living in a utopian state, which is what the Greeks called us. That wasn't the name we called ourselves. So we've got many different names based on attributes that we had, let's say, over the time. So when you're dealing with us and this blackness, we need to get into this in a bit more detail, but the part I want to focus our attention to is, what is this term here, natural nature? Because a lot of times people use the word overstand, they use other terminologies from us, and they use it in a sense of, or even master teacher, various different terms, and they use it like they're kind of slang terms, but they have meaning to be unpacked and understood. So when you're talking about natural nature, you have to understand that nature is a system of rules that have been designed by who we're referring to as the Panatharu. Understood? And suns, remember, gave birth to the solar system, and not only work within but convey these rules within natural nature. So nature is a state, and it is a reactive state which human beings today, particularly in the Western Hemisphere and even world over, not just in the West, have confused with God. So when they're really talking about God, they're really talking about nature, and this is where the confusion comes in, because that state of nature is a reactive state. So what does that mean? Well, it means that basically there's no judgment in there. There's not someone making decisions in that environment. And we've given this example a few times before. If I'm in a room filled with gas, or there's a gas leak, and I know there's a whole heap of families, children in there, whatever the case may be, and somebody decides, inadvertently to light a lighter, what's going to happen? The place is going to explode, correct? So the reality of the situation is, there's no force sitting there that says, okay, in that situation, this is going to result in people being killed, therefore that rule shouldn't apply in that situation. Which is what human beings are saying God is doing. Then don't understand why God lets children die in certain situations, or let things die, because human beings have imprinted their imagination, their belief system over that system in nature, which is a set of rules that were created to govern that aspect of existence. So if you do the things necessary to create fire, fire will be created. This is why the Christian minister can create fire, as well as the Satanist can create fire. There are rules in a system which we are subject to. And you can't break those rules. They apply and manage existence, the growth within existence, and they're not based on what we might consider to be the ethics and morals, etc., that we think we know about. Because if you think about the planet, for example, which in its system, excuse me, that it has to regulate life here on Earth, it has to make decisions about which life forms can live and which life forms must be made extinct through a process called cybernetics. And it's not an emotional decision as we may have it based upon, well, we like the look of pandas, therefore we're going to keep those, but, you know what I mean? Well, we don't like spiders, so we're going to get rid of spiders. We don't like spiders. Which, let's be honest, if most of us were in charge, that's probably what we do. We get rid of spiders and keep, you understand, an animal or whatever that we do like. Not understanding what the role spiders play within the environment. Yeah, human beings do a lot of things. We do a lot of things, get rid of things, destroy things, and then realize years after, damn, that had this interconnected set of consequences that we didn't fully understand. You understand? So nature is a system of rules. When we're saying natural nature, we are acknowledging the fact that these Natharu created that stable system. Yeah, and we talk about unnatural nature as positive, as 9, as Nupu forces, versus unnatural nature, which causes things to decay and be destroyed, which is dealing with Zupu forces. Yeah, where the Zupu is turned on its side. Yeah, the death of 9. To decay and destroy unnatural nature, which is what we're seeing manifested in this society today, because unnatural beings are advancing their agenda, advancing their nature. Hence why you see in the supermarket seedless grapes. Seedless grapes is unnatural nature. Fruit should have seeds. Whether or not it's convenient for human beings to not have them, the natural process or progression or success of life is by way of seeds. Understood? So that's the continuation. The moment you cut that off, understood, then basically it's unnatural in nature. If you eat seedless grapes, guess what's going to become to your seed? You become seedless. So these are the types of things that we're talking about in natural nature, unnatural. So we're looking at what natural is our Natharu, or that energy state that influences nature or drives it. Understood? But there are a set of rules that cannot be, as I say, undone. They were created for a reason, to manage existence. You understand? Or it to be self-sufficient in that regard. So let's look at what it's saying here. So this is from Tankanth or Tankanth Salvation. It says, we Natharu overseers have designated a genetic system, a scientific system of natural rules of nature, and they are on the outside of natural rule. So when we're saying nature, what you're really saying is these rules or systems, and if we're aligned to it, and we develop systems that are aligned to it, then we call it natural. If systems are not in line with those rules, then that's considered to be unnatural. The same like when you go into a supermarket, you see there is organic vegetables, organic fruit, because they've been raised and reared or grown a certain way, correct? And if it hasn't been grown in conjunction with these standards or rules, then it's just fruit. Yes, and some of that fruit might be genetically modified, whatever, so on and so forth. Maybe not in this country so much, but it's just fruit versus organic fruit. So in this same system, things are referred to as nature because they fall in line with the system put in place by Parmatharu. And if they don't, then it's outside of that, or it's not aligned with that. It's considered to be unnatural. So, and this is talking specifically about the human body. Yeah, so we're looking at it in this context as opposed to the universe at this point. And it says a set of genetic principles to each creature of these species and entities which all submit to. So we're all part of that natural system, understood? Which we were touching upon a bit earlier. But hear what it says. It says, of your 24,000 chromosomes in your genomes, you are always using 24%. The other 76% is jumping DNA and satellite DNA interfacing with the morphic field. So basically, when you're dealing with DNA and RNA, for example, it doesn't hold shape information. So when they talk about stem cells, which are undesignated cells, they can be placed in the heart area, for example, an undesignated cell, and it can become a heart. And this is because they're interfacing with what is referred to as a morphogenetic field. It holds the shape information that pertains to the species. So in effect, cells, once they're placed in a certain area in the body, they are downloading, for lack of a better word, shape information to know what to grow into. Yes, this is why, as I say, that we are interconnected in that way by our morphic resonance field. So if, for example, we start learning, which we are doing, learning our language of Sabaik now, when the next generation comes along, it will be easier for them to pick up that language, because us learning it, going through the painstaking work of learning it in this generation, it feeds into this morphic field. Understood? And we evolve, for lack of a better word, or grow as a species as a result of that morphic field. You understand? It's an interconnecting factor. And what we send up there in terms of our behaviors, thoughts, all of it obviously is being recorded. You understand? And so basically here we have this, what they're referring to as jumping or satellite DNA. And then we have this transient 24% within our genome that we're continually using. All within the rules or under these natural rules. So it says, so in fact, you are responding to alterations in your state of consciousness. Your satellite DNA's ability to expand the number of repeating sequences means an increase in outformation to your information learning capacity of your DNA. So that within that 76%, there are changes and triggers taking place within the universe, understood, which have the ability to, as I say, improve our DNA, improve the potency, the frequency of it, etc. And we're missing a certain vital element to take full advantage of that. And one of the reasons that is because the Mukasu refers to our satellite and jumping DNA as junk DNA. Now it's junk for him, but it's not junk for us. For us, it is basically allowing us as a species to hit new states of evolution, as it's touching upon in verse 21. So it says, as fractal antenna, DNA interacts with the etheric of space, time, and vacuum terms, which are synonymous in this context with your 0 time point of 0.0, and the Shak energy, which interacts with your consciousness. So, excuse me. So, fractal antenna, I haven't got time to go into all that, but that's what these pictures are today. And it's making reference to the fact that basically your DNA is like an antenna that's able to pick up and interact with that state of nothingness, which we'll get into a little bit later. Yeah, this blackness where there are quantum elements where the rules or that we have on the physical plane change. Yeah, where nothing, as I say, nothing is impossible, but nothing beyond the ability of our mind is beyond us to achieve when we start to tap in or interact with this blackness. And our DNA, as I say, acts like a communication device, understood, to be able to enhouse or take in more of this outformation coming to us in the form of information to transform us. Because remember, information is what? Keeping us in a certain type of formation. But all human beings, all life forms, the planet as well as ourselves, we have a ascension pathway that we have to fulfill, in terms of fulfilling our potential. And the fractal antenna aspect of our DNA enables us to interact not only interdimensionally, but with aspects and energies within nature that we can take full advantage of to make our DNA more potent. It is a communication device, or a set of programs, you understand, in terms of the structure. Now, so it says each race or species is affected by their environment. Everything they are taught, believe, and accept. Everything they sharub, eat, baru, eat, yafuh, breathe in. All is affecting your state of akal, mind, and being. Your 24,000 genomes, and 24% of them you use at all times. And the 76% you have been khaduba, lied to and told are not used, called by them junk DNA, which is true for them, but not for the Nagaru Negroids. Seek out your DNA salvation, which can only come by way of your own Salafu ancestors. So what is this making reference to? It's what we were touching upon earlier. The way it has been designed is that your DNA ties into a certain frequency register within nature. It's like we're interlinked to a broadcasting station. Wu-Sabat, or Wunawadp as it was previously known, is being broadcast on a certain frequency. And by race, because of our design, we have to tune into it, because our ancestors are broadcasting outformation coming to us in the form of information or instructions that we need to know that helps us evolve. Because they were once in the physical, but have evolved to higher states of living beyond death and so on and so forth, transformed from what was once in the physical, now as ether or energy, and have therefore laid the pathway for us as their children to evolve to become what they are. And that becomes laid out in our culture, language, what you call religion, or way of life. This is why us as ancient Egyptians, or Muhammadu, what did we do? We built heaven on earth to keep us in tune with the what? With the stars. Our ancestors. Look at the word ancestor, the word an. Understood? Look it up. It means sun. Where they get the word most high from. The Sumerians took it and created Anu, the most high. But the word An, it means sun. Suncestors. We are their what? Descendants. So we built heaven on earth, what? To stay in a resonance frequency pattern with our ancestors. To stay in tune, to stay on that frequency. We are evidence of a people who have been untuned, out of frequency with natural nature and our ancestors. Understood? So this is why it's saying that salvation is within our DNA. It's who we are aspect. Because that's where the secrets are. And that is why your endocrinal glandular system secretes information, secretes hormones. In that is our salvation. And so we're looking at certain things and it's being just replayed into us that suppresses our mind state. You watch a film like Harry Potter and don't realize that it's not Harry Potter, it's Harry Potter. What was one of his friends' names? The girl. Harmony. Hormone. The games that get played in this society to suppress your natural abilities, you wouldn't even believe it. Because we don't realize who we are. We are not that which is worshipped. We came from the blackness. We are the blackness within existence. Nothing exists without us. This is how much power we're yielding. But we don't know it. We don't know. He knows who we are. You don't know who you are. And even if we do know who we are, we're not putting the time and effort in to develop ourselves with those faculties to free ourselves from the conditions that we find ourselves in. And this is the challenge. We say we don't like the beast and their ways and all this kind of stuff, but we do. Let's be honest, we do like it. Because we lived among, we were bitten by it. We've lived amongst a society, understood. So, but we must do what's necessary each day, isn't it? So it's a daily fight to make the right choices, to put ourselves back in line with our ancestors and not moving away from it. As hard as and difficult as it is, because you now understand if 24% of your DNA is continually being influenced and changed by the environment that we're in, then you need to control the environment as well as what you're doing individually. Ultimately, isn't it? Which is why we as Sabaeans had an environment set up or a land called Tamaray, and the devil came in on May 8, 2002 and destroyed it. 476 acres where we were doing our rituals again, because we understood environment or the importance of it and the right tones. This sound that you're hearing through the system, the own sound, it played 24/7, never turned off. Yeah, the original Big Bang, the own sound. To keep us in tune. This is how your ancestors live. We didn't put up buildings for the sake of it and let people just build anyhow. No, it's tied into nature, tied into the human body. Because we knew that those rules, this was the expression of our ancestors. So therefore, in nature are those answers that we're seeking, or the confirmation, of the answers that we're seeking in nature. Not all that we are teaching today. Don't believe, check us out. In the sense, seek confirmation. But ultimately, confirmation, as we said on the last class, is not, oh, it's appeared in the white man's documentary, or it's appeared on this. Those are elements or aspects of it, but ultimately, you're going to have to find those answers in nature. Prove them for self. Because when we start going beyond a certain point, the white man can't follow us. He can't follow us. We start talking about some of the higher aspects of who and what we are in this day and time. So what is missing? When we talk about that junk DNA, or what they're calling junk DNA, is because a certain gland from our the hippocampus area from our brain was removed. Yeah, it was once part of our endocrine glandular system, and when Panatharu, or those of them that were incarnated in the physical, they had this in their bloodstream. So 100% of their DNA was being used. Yeah, and some refer to it by different names: gold, monatomic elements, philosopher's stone. It's got many different names within the society. And as we talked about last class, the order of the white rose, that is what they're seeking. So the order of the red rose and the order of the white rose. The order of the white rose is seeking this monatomic or liquid gold. Yeah, which when reacted back in us would basically take that 76% what is referred, or junk DNA within our system, not the 76, but the junk DNA within our system, which can get broken down, eating white sugar and different things, poor diet, so on and so forth, and basically combines it to make the DNA strands 10,000 times more potent. So when we're communicating through our body, or we're having thoughts or whatever, it's 10,000 times faster than it is now. So those four higher senses, what? Psychometry, object reading, telepathy, yeah, the ability to read others' thoughts, clairvoyance, yeah, the ability to see interdimensionally. So and what's the other one? So, psychometry, clairvoyance, intuition, quick perception of truth, These are 4 higher senses, which you add them to the so-called 5 senses, gives us 9 senses again. Yeah, Nathar, Patar, 10. That's what they refer to as. Yeah, when a person was whole again, the whole of their being. So this was removed from the endocrinal glandular system, once in the hippocampus area of the brain, and now must be placed back under the chin, an area referred to as the submental, and it works with the tonsils and also the appendix. So, as you see there, this is the hippocampus area of the brain. Hippo came from the name because the hippo is referred to as the river horse. And if you look at the hippocampus area of the brain, as you can see there, it looks like a sea horse. Understood? So these monatomic elements impact or increase, or part of them increase melanin production, yeah, in the pineal gland. Understood? Yeah, which are referring to as the midbrain. As you can see, some say it looks like the eye of Hara or Horus in the sand, with the midbrain looking like the hawk, yeah, which again is one of Hara or Horus's symbols. So here it's in the hippocampus area in the brain, so it's areas to look up, but it won't be placed back there. It was there, and the nerve endings are still there, which is why some people still get remnants of those senses, those higher senses, yeah, so intuition, telepathy, so on and so forth, because the nerve endings are still there, but the gland was maimed or removed, yeah, to keep us at a certain mortal state. Now, in certain ancient Tamarian texts, this substance was being referred to as what is it? Understood? So you see in this papyrus of Ani, it says, I ascend like the golden hawk of Hara, Horus. What is it? I come before mortals without dying. What is it? I come before my father's throne. What is it? So on and so forth. Yeah, so this what is it? This is then, interesting enough, you find the same thing copied into the Bible. And we see Exodus chapter 32, verse 20. It says, and he took the calf which they had made and burnt it in the fire, and they ground it to a powder and strawed it and upon the water, and made the children of Israel drink of it. An unproven event. You understand? But they're drinking of this thing. So remember, that calf was what? A golden calf, correct? Symbolic of who they call Hathor, yeah, or Hat-Haratat. Yes? And so they ground up this gold, yes, and converted it into a powder that they could drink. Why? Is the reason. Yeah, you see the sun central to our what? Our core iconography. Yeah. Now, when we talk about this substance or the resurrection in Egypt, they have this in our ancient Egyptian mystery system, they refer to as the Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, yeah, the composite of this falcon, and the stork, which is a symbol of renewal. Yeah, and ties into, as I say, this what they refer to as what is it, which the what is it is mafkuzet, or what they refer to as liquid gold, monatomic elements. Understood? Excuse me. And the interesting thing about it, we haven't got time to go into this in great detail, because it's veering us off to somewhere where we're not really going in this class. But when you understand about monatomic elements and how the process of transformation works, this gold, yeah, when they get into a high spin state and it transforms, understood, yeah, it loses around about 44% of its original mass. Understood? So you imagine gold, as we know, is quite heavy, but when it goes into this monatomic or high spin state, part of it is transformed, 44% of it is transformed into pure light. 56% of its original mass remains, which is in this powder-like state. So it is crossing over between the physical and the etheric state. because part of it's been transformed. So it's got many different names. This secret or sacred ash even is another one of its names. It's mafkuzat or liquid gold. But once intaken, as I say, would give us what would be considered by some in their mythology what they call supernatural or superhuman abilities. But super just means above, yeah, making us closer to nature. Let's look at this particular video.
Roughly 68% of the universe is dark energy. About 27% makes up dark matter. So all we know is less than 5%. 95% of what surrounds us continues to be a mystery.
One of the ways that we get smarter is to try to build better instruments. And the Cold Atom Laboratory is one of those instruments. So Cold Atom Laboratory is intended to provide one of the most sensitive instruments mankind's ever built. That instrument is based around a Bose-Einstein condensate.
Bose-Einstein condensate is a unique quantum state of matter, which we can only obtain at the coldest temperatures and very high densities. It is actually a macroscopic ensemble of atoms that you can view with a camera, and these wispy clouds of atoms behave in very strange ways. They're no longer distinguishable as an individual particle. You really have to describe it more like atoms acting collectively as a wave.
So the quest to getting colder and colder temperatures, really that's to get a higher fidelity instrument. Basically, the colder you can get matter and reduce the amount of vibrations and other things that they normally do, you can start using them as more sensitive instruments to test other theories and understand physics at a more fundamental level.
It's not just lower temperatures, but it's also the fact that we want to study atoms, and we want to look at them for really long periods of time. And that is really only possible in microgravity.
On the Earth, we have a limited amount of time once you let go of the atoms or weaken them that they will fall out of your trap and run into the limits of your experiment. So when we get to a microgravity environment, we can get to these long interrogation times in space.
Once we get on orbit and into a microgravity environment, we'll be able to achieve temperatures never physically manifested before. So we will make the coldest spot in the universe by creating Bose-Einstein condensates and then further cooling them even beyond the BEC realm.
The ultra-sensitive atoms in the Cold Atom Laboratory have the potential to unlock many mysteries beyond the frontiers of the known universe.
Right, so an interesting video. One of the things that's quite, as I say, insightful about that is because when you look at almost well over 20 years ago, when the master teacher was talking in respect of the holy tablets and the black book, now we were making reference to the fact or being learned about quantum physics, and particularly the breaking down of the hydrogen atom into quarks, obviously BIAPs and ZEALs or ZEs. And you see that these subatomic particles, excuse me, that
my apologies, Nababkak. Would you put the background music back on?
Okay, no problem. Okay, there? Good. Total. So when you're talking about the ZEALs, the master explained that this universe is too cold. So it's not cold enough to produce ZEALs or ZEs. So the funny thing about it is that many of the things that our people seem not to be paying attention to what the master is saying. You can bet your bottom dollar the Mukasu is paying attention to every word that's coming out of his mouth in our doctrine, because of the fact that in order to create these particles, you need a certain, as I say, cold state of temperature that you can't produce on Earth. You have to produce, as he's talking about there, in a low gravity environment, i.e. In the upper aspects of our atmosphere. Understood? Yes? All right, okay. So let's do a quick recap. I ain't got a lot of questions. Let's see if you're paying attention. So just do your best to answer these and see how you get on. So let's look and see what we've got. Let's get the right one. Okay, so I'm going to launch this poll. I'll give you 3 minutes, because not a lot of questions, 3 minutes to answer the following questions. So if you don't know, just do your best to answer. So it's not going to register until you answer all of the questions. So there are 5 questions. First one just for the listening audience, for those on Facebook Live. So what does 999 plus 1 or 1000 represent in Wu-Sabat? That's the first question. And you select 2 answers from the possible choices available. Question 2 is, what is the Sabaic word for helpers? So let's see if you're paying attention there. What percentage of your DNA is in constant use? So that's question number 3. Question number 4 is, where is the Barafri gland? It doesn't even make sense. Where the Barafri gland is to be replaced in the human body. So where is the Barafri gland to be replaced in the human body? To make that make sense. And then what is the Sabaic word for blackness? So 5 questions there with multiple choice answers. And question number 1 has 2 possible choices. So give me 1 minute left. Okay, so I'll count down 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so if you're getting your final answers in, get them now. Okay, so let's share the results and let's look at what those answers are. Right, Hopefully you should all be able to see the screen. So what does 999 plus 1 or 1000 represent in Wu-Sabat? So 2 answers out of the choices there. So the higher elements of solid, liquid and gas, which is what most people put. Interesting. No, the answers there are 3 in 1, space, material and time. And the other answer there, 3 sons of Razak or Rizq. So those 1000, remember, existence must be made up of space, matter and time. So the zeros or the orbs represent that principle, yeah, the 3 in 1 principle. So good guess. I think it's really wrong. And then the 3 sons, the origin of where our ancestors come from or reside, yeah, and the linked planet in actuality to our one, yeah, planet Earth. What is a Sabaic word for helpers? So yeah, this was a bit of a tricky one because it wasn't on the screen for that long. So Sabaic word, most said ansars, yeah, because that's what helpers is in Arabic, or that's I suppose the English transliteration of that. Natharu, no, that means overseers. The actual answer here is Munsaru, so it's the 4th answer down. So Munsaru is the Sabaic word for helpers. So what percentage of your DNA is in constant use? So yeah, good. 24%, yeah, is in constant use. 76%, remember, is jumping, and satellite DNA. Yeah. Where is a Braffy gland to be replaced in the body? So it was in the hippocampus area of the brain, but it was removed and will be replaced in the submental area. So submental here again, so considered to be a lower brain area, so will be placed back in there. And then what is the Sabaic word for blackness? So pretty even really. Khamem and Kham. Yes, Kham means black. Khamem, that's in Hebrew. Khamem means black in Sabaic, but Khamem Nus means blackness. Yeah, so the Nus gives you that ness. So Khamem Nus was the answer here, yeah, for blackness. Yes, so see if you're paying attention there. So well done, everybody. Thank you for participating in that. I think we've got one more on that today, but it's not as long. So any questions before I continue with the next section?
Yes, we have a question from iHotep, and the question is, how did we become the children of the stars?
So when you say become the children of the stars, there's an aspect or element to that which assumes that we had a beginning. So when you start back and think prior to us being detected in space and time, so when you talk about the sun and its manifestation of itself, which is obviously a formula of hydrogen transforming into helium, remember it had a pre or a starting point prior to that, understood, in what is referred to as nothingness, or what would be classified today as subatomic particles, understood. When you start to step into that blackness, then what you're talking about is a state where certain life forms, if you want to classify it that, or certain life formlessness does not have a beginning or an end. It always has been. Yes? Until, as I say, it was conceived within the mind of all to be given form, to be given succession. So when you say, how did we become? We became by way of the mind of Fa'ut. Because when you see Fa'ut, it says what? All expanding. So we have always been part of existence. So we're not looking from the outside in. We are looking from the inside out. We are part of it. And at a certain point, when motion started, so if you imagine, when we're looking at, if you were to vibrate an object or to vibrate one's hand, on one side of the spectrum, if you moved it slowly enough, it will be imperceptible to that movement. Understood? So it'd be moving so slowly that it would appear still, but still in motion. But if you imagine, if you move that hand so fast that the speed that it's moving at, it would also appear still. So at a certain point in that blackness or within existence, motion was formed. So when you're thinking about that all expanding, it's not, when you're talking about stillness or that state of stillness before motion, we're talking about a slowing down in vibration. So them things that were moving or started to have motion became detectable at a certain point. Thus it was being called motion. But all of that was still taking place in the darkness, dark matter, dark energy, and a third aspect which they don't talk about in this society, dark hold. All of that was being birthed out of the female, who represents what would be classified as dark matter within existence. This is why light moves at what, 186, 272 miles per second. Based on the energy, how come it's not continually accelerating from the engine it started from? Something controlling its speed. Understood? So what is controlling that speed or the movement of those particles in darkness that renders them, at least those light particles I should say, in darkness, is because that speed is being held by those feminine forces. And out of that, those things, some things were born. Understood? So how do we become children is because Panatharu, out of the mind of all of the expansion of existence, that it was the manifestation of that form for our life form as we started to slow down in vibration. And why we became is because as each one of us is the all within all, each one of us is looking at existence through our own eyes and acquiring the experience of all from our perspective. Just like human beings are able to look under a microscope and study and look at their own brain, their own cells. So through our eyes, all or fa'ut is able to study itself, which when you bring all of those different perspectives together, it makes all that much greater. Understood? So we are the expression or the manifestation of those divine forms as soul, which enables all to study itself. It will expand, and at a certain point, it's going to all contract and then explode again. Understood? So that is how we became, if that makes sense. Yeah? If there's any more questions or it's not clear, please question further if I haven't answered your question.
No further questions.
Okay, so when we talk about some good questions today, so we talk about blackness, let's say, which we were just touching upon, and we'll get into this actually in more detail. We talked about, remember, space, matter, and time, yeah? And so our melanin is a manifestation or a representation of that, yeah, in various different aspects, at least, let's say, on the physical plane, or this lower aspect of those vibrations. Now, number 5 says, making you Nagarnadu Negroids, Mukumatu Egyptians, and as such, you as Chamemnus blackness. So, what you might have saying blackness, because within that blackness, there are different degrees, or different levels within the blackness. So, and there's a lot of space in space for things to coexist alongside each other, but vibrating at different vibrational rates. And the reason why we're able to distinguish between what is the physical plane versus the spiritual plane, plane of force, etc., these different levels of existence, is because your pineal gland, remember, is vibrating in sync with the atoms within the existence which we're in. And changing its vibrational rate enables us to ascend up and down or transform to exist in different dimensions and different states of existence within the universe, on into the multiverses, on into the omniverse. Understood? Yeah? Because one of the characteristics of all the atoms, which all Sabians and us as black people have to understand, is a principle called nutation. N-U-T-A-T-I-O-N, nutation. And it denotes that basically atoms within a certain environment, doesn't matter how big, so from the atom to the planets, within our physical existence, they're all nutating at the same rate, vibrational rate, and there's no power in the universe or in existence that can change that. Yes, it's a principle that we have to understand in terms of our transformational powers. Now, in all directions, supreme balancement, Chamem, Shaddad, black magic. So we touched upon supreme balancement earlier, and we touched upon black magic and what it means to us. Nothing to do with no chicken business and all that. It's to do with nature working for us and the force of nature working for us as black people. Now it says, eternity and infinity are other ways to say the same of you. Always was, always will be, as Muntharu, one who oversees your brother's keepers. Yeah, so brother asked a question earlier about how did we become, and as we expressed earlier, we've always been here. Yeah, so certain life forms don't have a beginning or an ending, they are, and that is us. Understood? One of our manifestations is as children of the Tharu, as sons. Yeah, 9 ether beings. So, oversees your brother's keeper. Now it says, undoubtedly, Nashat energy emotion is active ingredient of what? Tasha'urat, emotions and material. So when we're saying emotions, we're saying energy, emotion. And we'll go into a bit more detail. But here we see certain terms, eternity and infinity. So when we're using these terms or adjectives, understand that they're quantifiable. Yeah, they have some meaning behind them, which oftentimes in religion they don't have a meaning. And just to give an example, of what we're talking about here, we go back to one of our older books, holy tablets, originally released in 1996. We go to chapter 1, tablet 8. It says life forms on Tiamat Earth. Now the holy tablets, remember, is the bridge between religion and reality. Understood? So many of the stories in or you're reading the holy tablets, it's a highly scientific book with some of the prophecies even within it have started to manifest themselves, they manifest themselves on a daily basis now, it seems. You understand? When you look at a lot of the scientific publications being released. But for us, in terms of our development, it was to help us move from the religious mind into the realities of the universe. So it's got a lot of stuff in there that assists us in that purpose, and I understand it's to be revised as well for a new version to come out in this day and time, more aligned with the Tamarayan side as opposed to the Sumerian side, you understand? Because that was a school that we went through, but we now know the separation between the two. Anunnaki is one line, created the Caucasians, and then our line is the Natharu, who we are their children. Now, it says, lo, your planet Earth is within the 18th galaxy called the Milky Way because of its disc-shaped dense mass of stars, which has millions of stars and light from the planet called Earth. 2, the sun, stars, and reflected light of the moon from the sun produce the much needed illumination for Earth. One takes up where the other leaves off. 3, yet this is only made possible by the motions of these heavenly bodies. It will take you up to 30,000 years to go from the Earth through the Milky Way at Earth speed. So Earth's traveling at about 1,024 miles per hour. It says, each individual conceived has a 0 time reference from the moment of inception, the moment or incident, in pure and holy darkness, before cause and effect, before right and wrong, good and evil, before chaos and conception, process or growth. So basically, remember, when we're dealing with time, because we mentioned that, remember, it's one of those 3 points within existence. Remember, in this society, they miss out a certain portion of time, isn't it? Because they've started the time system off with seconds, because they came along second and have missed out the firsts. Yeah, so we have, remember, these they're not incidents within time, yeah, called thens. Time is about the events. So if we think about those points, isn't it, we go moments, yeah, which they don't record, so moments, seconds, minutes, hours, yes, days, weeks, months, years, and generations. 9 points in time. Yeah, 1 moment, 2 seconds, 3 minutes, 4 hours, yeah, 5 days, 6 weeks, 7 months, 8 years, and 9 generations. Yeah, so some generation can be anything from 30 to 100 years. You understand? So these are 9 points in time. So that 0 time reference, as say, was conceived what? From the moment of inception. Understood? Yes. So this is when, I suppose, when it was first thought, the moment of inception. So this is when the thought came together of you, as opposed to when the from conception, where basically that is a sperm hitting the ovum, isn't it? So from the moment of inception, 1 0 time reference is conceived. So there's 3 months prior to that takes place where one is conceived mentally first. Yes, remember, this is reflected in the deity or the symbolism around the deity of Gibab or Geb or Sabat, of the goose that laid the golden egg, because the goose is a bird of 2 elements, air and water, and that air and water ties back into Gibab or Sabab, whose partner was Nut or Natat. Yeah, their parents were what? Shuar or Shu, and Tafafnatat or Tefnut. Tefnut represents moisture, and Shuar or Shu represents air. Yes, Shuar represents perceptive thoughts, and Tefnut or Tafafnatat represents receptive thoughts. When perceptive thoughts are come together with receptive thoughts, they produce concepts. So we were birthed in mentally first before we became physical. And the 0 time reference is necessary for, as I say, transformation, because it's the stamp in the universe when we came into existence. When we're born, that is considered to be our fake birth. Oh, excuse me. So conception is considered to be our fake birth, and then we're born. That is when we're logged in this society in time. Yeah, i.e., you call it your birthday, even though you're only born once. So every day that you celebrate, every year after that should be your anniversary of your birth. So it says each individual has a 0 time reference from the moment of inception, the moment or incident in pure and holy darkness before cause and effect. So Wu-Sabat is interested in the cause that cause and effect. We're not interested in cause and effect. Which is why it was a good question. How did we become? Because we're interested in the cause that cause and effect. A lot of people say everything for a reason, or it happens for a reason, and don't know what they're talking about. Because unless they understand about the world of things, everything does happen for a reason. That is correct, but only when the thing happens. It's not all predestined, preordained. A lot of things, if you're supposed to be falling out of a window, yes, you are supposed to be falling out of that window as and when the incident or event happens. Because it can go a different way. And all those options exist within existence for it to go whatever conceivable way it can happen. But a lot of it's controlled, if not all of it's controlled by the choices that we make. When we understand that, and when we get control of that, real control of it, then maybe our fate will start to work more in our favor than it appears to be. It appears not to have been thus far. So it says before cause and effect, before right and wrong, good and evil, before chaos and conception. So this supreme balancement that we were talking about. Conception, process or growth in impure and unholy light of this world, where there is will, good and evil things happening. That point is real time in each individual's existence. In the physical world from conception is fate time. You exist in what is called set time. You set the time from life to death. It all exists before you and will exist after you, as we were touching upon a bit earlier. You and your life is only a point in short space in real time, which exists in all when the light of life is cut on. So this is the thing. Our ancestors see this as death, and where they are in the darkness, that as living. Because fire is temporary, isn't it? Yeah, so which life is a burning process. Yes, which we touched upon when we were dealing with the breath in the last couple of classes. They're breathing through our nose and we breathe out through our mouth, and there's a burning process taking place there, which happens in the lungs, yeah, which cleans the blood. And that way, if you know how we feel heat, once that light is extinguished, yes, what exists after death is the question, because it's not life, because we're not breathing. So we were in a state where we existed prior, understood, as it said, the light of life was cut on, and then something is going to exist after that. So there's existence after death for us, but not life after death, because life is a burning process. So the question is, what is that aspect of us that is existing? Because we should be doing the things necessary to perfect and cultivate it now while we're in this skin suit, to be strong enough at the point of death to transition to higher states of existence, which is not the same for all on the planet Earth, yeah, who do not have Ba'ah or soul. Thus, some become trapped here, which is what we're touching upon a little bit in this class. Some become trapped here as spooks, spectres, etc. Yeah, and cannot leave. Yeah, so energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be what? Changed in polarity. Yeah, things that we must start to understand. Now, I want to go through all of this. I'll just finish verse and we'll move on to verse 21. So it says, it begins real time, yet existence was already in pure and holy darkness And under set time, each individual's real-time existence is their point of origin. So your inception was connected to your zero time reference. Fate time, or as it's considered to be fate time, is conception. And then set time is when you're born. Yeah, so set time, when your telomeres really will determine how long, as you die in some kind of accident or before some adverse fate. There's a set time for when your cells are going to regenerate and reproduce itself, and we will expire, or our physical structure will expire. And not all aspects of us. Now, the reason why I was talking about eternity and various things being definable, because when we talk about things like this, so it says, excuse me, it says the Milky Way galaxy is part of a spiral galaxy, is inside of the universe and is very minute. Yeah. 20. The light from the sun comes to Earth. Light travels from the sun in 8 minutes and approximately 20 seconds. Some say in 4 minutes. Your universe, so just one now, one universe. Your universe contains 19 galaxies. There are 1 billion other galaxies. The distances in your universe reach up to 26 billion light years. Yeah, 1 light year is what? About 5.4 trillion miles. Yeah, so 26 billion light years in our universe. 22. Your universe is the smallest and the innermost of 7 universes, which are part of a galactic federation of 19 galaxies. As the universe increases, the universes get larger. The mind cannot comprehend the circumference of the universe. It is imaginable to you while in your body. The best word that describes it is what? Infinity. The universe doesn't end. You are merely limited by your imagination. Yeah? So, this is when we're talking about being definable, we're using words to say, like what? Eternity and infinity. You know what I mean? In Wu-Sabat, it's quantifiable. But you can imagine, it is unconceivable to imagine, yes, that size is difficult for us while in this current structural form. But if you listen to the affirmation, it's talking about, you know what I mean, I am a part of all. So it's when we mentally understand, or we bring ourselves into that quantum state, we're a part of everything. It's our ego and our mind and our understanding that keeps us limited in this way. Because when we merge with all, then we're a part of all knowledge, all experiences, all things that are taking place, and can tap into it. But if we see ourselves individually, then we are confined to this skin suit, which is only a vessel or a vehicle that allows us, say, to move within this physical world, to learn what we need to learn, and then move on and grow if we're able to pass the various different tests, or come back and reincarnate and learn even more tests and experiences in this realm. So when we're talking about the makeup of that blackness or that existence, we see that 76% of it is dark energy, and 24% of it is that number coming back up again. 24% of it is dark matter or dark material. You understand? Now, if you notice in the clocks, all the clocks now go tick, 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 isn't it? And no, where's the top gone? The top's been removed. Yes, subtly just took place, subtly over a few decades. It doesn't go tick-tock anymore. The clock just goes tick, tick, tick. You didn't even notice. So a certain aspect of our time has been removed. Yeah, and if we're not paying attention to it, certain higher extraterrestrial beings or interdimensional beings can make use of that time. Because we're not paying attention to it. And if you think about it in your state of existence, whilst that might sound crazy, if you think about it, How long is a second to microscopic entities that are working in your body? I'm speaking now. We're conveying thoughts. You're hearing my voice. You're processing my voice. All of this is taking place in time frames which are in moments, not seconds. So for beings who are able to manipulate or work within that time system, how long is a second to them? Because if we think about our cellular life and the atoms and cells within our physical structure and body, they're working on a different time pattern than what we are perceiving in time. If we had to regulate all of the things taking place in our body consciously, we would die. We couldn't make the decisions fast enough. So the involuntary aspect of you is in tune with that blackness or natural nature to receive its instructions for it to know what to do and how to do it to keep us alive. And so we are a manifestation, or we are a universe. And this is why we keep saying over and over again, to understand or unravel the secrets of the universe, one must study self. Study the body. The master's constantly saying this. Know thyself, is not dealing with black history per se. That's a baby understanding of it, and a kindergarten understanding of it. It's to know how one's body works. Because you are a universe. The rules of out space and in space are exactly the same. Understood? So, when they talk about dark matter, it's not to freak you out or whatever, it's because they can't see it with modern instrumentation. So that's why it's referred to as dark. They know something's there, but they can't see it because it's affecting the movement of stars, so on and so forth. And so they know something's there in existence, but they can't detect it, so it's being referred to as dark. So dark material is the tick, understood? Time or dark hold is the talk, that is the moments, and then dark energy becomes the rest between the tick and the talk. Understood? Yes? And dark matter then itself breaks down that 90% of the material within existence is blackness. If you add up all of the stars, the planets, comets, everything within existence that you can see, it makes up 10% of that darkness, or dark matter, or dark material. So the majority of existence is blackness. Yeah, significant ratio in this regard. Any questions?
No questions.
I can see a couple of written questions in the chat. Are you looking at those?
Let's look. I haven't got anything in my chat.
Okay, I can see a question there about
mine are empty.
About cremation. Someone's asked about cremation. Linda, yeah, does cremation or burial affect our journey in the afterlife? It's a good question, actually. We have to work. It does, but we have to work with where we're at, basically. Yes, those death rituals are important, but because we're not in our own land and within our own, performing our rituals in our own land, then at this day and time it's better to cremate. Understood? But that cremation shouldn't take place before around about 72 hours, because the energy of the person is still connected to the body. But after that time, then yeah, one would cremate. And the purpose of cremation is to remove all elements as best as possible so that it can't be used by other forces who would seek to manipulate and use the person's energy after the point of death. As strange as it may sound, there are orders and forces out there that basically seek to live off and thrive off of beings who are stronger than them. So parasitical beings in nature. Do you understand? And so that can be to the extent of eating human flesh, to the extent of what they Caucasians used to do, and still do today, this order of the white rose, is crushing up the bones of our ancestors, mixing it with water or whatever, and drinking that to basically see if it would eliminate the genetic deficiencies which they had. Yeah, because they're looking for that liquid or monatomic gold elements, because certain people in this day and time are being born, you understand, with that barafry gland, or being replaced back, and we'll be able to produce this at a certain point in the future in our bloodstream, as we did many thousands of years ago. You understand, we were more closely aligned with our ancestors. So yes, burial is important. There's a class called the spiritual you after the physical you dies. So if you search that out on YouTube, you can get more information about what happens after death, and so you can use that, as I say, to your advantage, to know exactly what's going to take place, to remove the fear out of the situation. Okay, so moving on. So we see here, I say, the universe is, or existence, is broken down into this triad principle, and so we see that here in relation to ourselves, yeah, mother, father, and child. Yeah, so this is our Trinity, and so not God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, because three doesn't divide into one, and it's on different levels. Understood? But here we see 1/3, 1/3 makes up the whole. Understood? So you are 33 and 1/3 your father, 33 1/3 your mother. Them coming together creates a new you. Yeah, or 1, 3, 5. Understood? Mother being 1, father 3, and 5. You are the harmony. You understand? Or mother sharp, father flats. The child is the what? Harmony. Yeah, so all based on sound. Yeah, within existence. So solid, liquid, and gas. Again, another key triad in our existence. In fact, the master expressed in a book called Man from Planet Risk that we actually haven't encountered real water or liquid yet, because all of these are really particles of matter or material. Understood? So made up of atoms. That's an interesting concept to think about, that we haven't actually encountered real water yet. Understood? But there is a science in water, and we're made up of what? 71%. The liquids in our body make up 71%, just like the planet is made up of 71% water, and the rest of it being land or material. So, and the secret of water is that water is always trying to find other water. Yeah, so we have the nature of water ourselves, yeah, as Nagara. Yeah. And then when we look at another triad, the Katat body, the Ka'ah spirit, and the Ba'ah soul. Yeah. Most people on the planet have Katat body, not most people, excuse me. Other races, some races, Caucasian has Katat and Ka'ah, like the animals have Katat and Ka'ah, but they don't have Ba'ah soul unless we have mixed in with them and given it to them. You understand? They don't have that higher connection or soul in that regard, which enables us to transition past the point of death. Yeah. So we can see here that, and we get more into this, we step into the clock, or the SMAT circle as they refer to it as, yeah, the space, matter and time circle, which we'll go into a little later. But it says, look, the counterclockwise rotation in space, matter or material, ether and elements, atom and atoms, that is a universe. Just as your body is a universe with a circulatory system and, in fact, its own internal sun of 3, solid, liquid and gas. So your being is in tune with outer space, and your body also works with time. You You are a clock and are affected by all movements, sounds which translate into modes, emotions, expressions, depressions, suppressions, and impressions. So this is why we have to now start to get into the granular detail and this confirmation that you are that. It's one thing saying it, I'm a universe, I'm this, I'm that, or whatever. It's another thing seeking confirmation and understanding it. Yeah, and how at this stage of our existence, yeah, if the Nathara, our ancestors, are responsible for managing life and life forms within existence, yeah, or they manage the expansion and growth of the universe. So imagine we as their children are doing the same thing, managing the growth and expansion of our universe. So before somebody gives you a higher job to do, you've got a smaller job to do with less consequences, but it's still a universe. Yeah, what life forms are contained within your solar system that you're managing? That the drink you pour down your in your mouth every day. Yeah, if we could really see what was taking place, would we continue to be as selfish in terms of our desires and needs? Anybody who's had a look at their blood system under a microscope, you see exactly the impact of the decisions you've taken. Or you get an insight, I should say, into decisions we've taken, don't you? Not drinking enough water, you see broken cells in there. Or you can see the metal that you've drank from drinking canned drink, messing up your internal system. So if we really had insight into what really was taking place, the more you know, the more responsible we become, or we could go the other direction and become ignorant, ignoring those responsibilities. So it's a bit different us looking at ourselves now as the God managing our universe, making the decisions that affect you internally, as a replication of what takes place in higher states of existence. So is this practice? Are we in practice mode? Are we in university in the physical to learn about the higher aspects of self? Because in that trash movie, Gods of Egypt, one of the interesting things about it was, you understand, well, one, that they were all bigger than the normal human beings, which you see depicted on the Sumerian tablets. But if you remember, when they got cut, they bled gold. But the interesting thing, that movie, when they depicted Ray, I mean, the movie's, as I say, it is what it is. But the higher up he went, the more work there was to do. It wasn't that the higher up you got, you could get to chill. The higher up he got, the more responsibilities they had. So one has to understand this, and whether they're comfortable with responsibility, the ability to respond, because that's what deity means, or the definition of it is in our language, in Wu-Sabat. Yeah, the ability to respond to situations. That's what makes a person a god. Whether they respond or don't respond, but the ability to respond and have an effect and control their environment, understood, is what makes us deity. Now, are we going to continue to be subject to our environment, or are we going to make the necessary changes to take control of our environment? And you've got environment inside of you, internally, and we've got the external environment. We're being affected by both. And when we talk about reflection and projection, understood, we're talking about what is taking place inside of us. Reflection that is being projected externally outside of us, that we are controlling. Yeah, which is why it needs 2 classes to do, or 2 parts to do, because it's complicated. What is real? We're going into details now to understand how do our eyes work? How's our brain work? Because when you start to look at these things, you think, how come we didn't know none of this? What is reality versus what we believe is 2 different things. So, in these patterns, we see this triad principle again. This is the hieroglyph or the safuf for water. Yeah, and as we expressed before, when it is horizontal, it means naturally occurring water. Yes, naturally occurring, as opposed to a lake or a reservoir, like a man-made lake or a reservoir or something like that, or a canal. Then it would be shown vertically. Yeah, same thing. But you can see here that basically we see these 3 points again: sharps, majors, and flats. Again, triad principle. Understood? Yeah, that our universe, the Big Bang of our universe, created 8 tones. So when that Big Bang happened for our universe, it created 8 tones. Those 8 tones could be perceived as 8 dimensions or 8 worlds. And then each one of those worlds subdivides again into 8 different dimensions, which at one time we're able to move between those dimensions when things get beyond repair. That's why we've been around so long. Got survival mechanisms. Yeah, for those who know. That's why the physical body is not the end. I want us to understand spiritually, which is why they're seeking to teach us as their children what those ascension pathways are, what those survival pathways are, because we've been around for millions of years. And you think what, the planet hasn't been hit by major comets, hasn't been struck by significant extraterrestrial wars, which have been interpreted as comets, but we're still here. Our genes are still here. Even the Mukasu for the last 6,000 years trying to destroy our genes, we're still here because we must be here. Our mind is one of the things that's holding the very elements of this universe together. This is who we are, as opposed to the what. So, what you're calling do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, these are 8 tones or octaves, understood, which make up the foundation within our universe. Hence, we talk about Wu-Sabat, we talk about sound, right reasoning. Sound can mean sound is things you hear. We're talking about sound, like firm, foundation. Yeah, so we have to understand that within and in and around us, there are many different states of existence, but obviously we're only honing in on a certain part of it based on our senses. So, but just because we can't see or perceive it with our senses doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So when we talk about levels, you have to try and think that it's not necessarily like, because we have to draw it on a piece of paper, it's not necessarily one above the other, like up, understood? It's intertwined, which is what's showing you here, the different planes, obviously within existence, and then the corresponding element on the etheric side, understood? So spiritual and physical, yeah, and the various different points. So thoughts, for example, are on the 4th plane of existence, yeah, mental thoughts formed here, and the rules obviously are different than how they are on the material plane. So here I can imagine my dream house and it appears instantly, understood, based on my imagination. But when I want my dream house on the material plane, in order to build, I have to destroy it. Yes? I have to destroy trees to make the wood. I have to destroy earth and soil and other compounds to make concrete that I need. Understood? Sand has to be milled, manufactured, whatever, to make glass. Everything there has to be, something has to be destroyed in order to build on this material plane. But when I imagined and built it on the fourth plane of existence, I didn't have to destroy anything to build. So this is showing you there's different rules in operation here. As at the point of death, there are different rules in the spiritual plane, which when a person dies, their induction takes place, or they are to transition. The gate opens at 3 a.m. every morning, which allows us to pass through, and they receive that spiritual induction. But some can get trapped here for various different reasons, as can some discarnate forces arrive here to seek to manipulate or live through vicariously, because they don't have a physical body, through people, through the physical world, because we are spiritual and physical. And so a person to live their desires, or I don't know, have that bite of chicken one more time, they're going to have to in-house a person to experience that. And you say it sounds crazy, it sounds funny, but imagine you feeling you having the desire, the energy for hunger, or the desire for thirst, or the energy for thirst, and you're not able to satisfy it. How that would grow for those who were too material to transition to the higher planes of existence. Yeah, like a fiend, you're going to in-house anything or do anything to fulfill that particular desire, which is why they say life is a burning, because you're seeking to burn out those desires so that you're not pinned to things that are here. And that even goes as far as even children that can hold you, because it's energy, isn't it, that can hold you here. So when one is ready, or the soul is ready to discard these physical aspects, it must be free of desires. Understood? That should have been burned out. That's why it can take up to 24,000 times for a person to incarnate and master this particular realm. Understood? So here, just to give you the feel that it's inward, outward, up, down, is intertwined. Yeah, these different states or levels of existence, or planes of existence, excuse me. Yeah, planes of existence. So planes are basically moods of vibrational energy that are within a system. Yeah, a recognized system, hence it's called a plane. And so here, obviously the physical plane has its rules, which we are in the material plane. The plane of force, for example, is where the weather is controlled. Then you have the spiritual plane. So for each physical atom, there is an etheric counterpart. And then we have our thoughts, which are also physical. Yeah, thought forms. All of this is a manifestation of divine thought forms. And then we step up to other planes, divine truth. So something can be true in one state, but it's not reality. So someone could say, well, Jesus is a prophet or Messiah within the Bible. That is true according to that book, but outside of the book, it's not a reality. Yeah, because I haven't found his bones of his body, so on and so forth, yet or ever. You understand? So there's a difference between truth and reality. And then at this seventh plane, at least for this one, we go back into the bosom or the source. Yeah, and then we step up to 8 and 9, which is not shown here. So again, this is understand the context of what we're operating, and again, who we are, and the subtleties around this. When we step further, we'll see the different aspects of us are aligned with the different states, or allows us to exist in these different states all at the same time, but they're being powered differently. You understand? So someone, for example, to maintain our physical structure, we're deriving, isn't it, food, you understand, and nutrition from certain sources. But the nutrition in the food is operating from out the plane of force. Understood? How do you empower the mental you? Well, don't you feel a lift sometimes when you're reading? You're on these classes or whatever, you're hearing new information, you feel a lift. So that's improving one's connection. That's improving the mental aspect of you. So these are powered differently. The Mukasu, the Caucasian, will never teach you these things because he doesn't have them in the way that we have them. He doesn't have them. So why would he concern himself about that? Which is why you've got to be about self and kind. We don't deal in race hate. Understood? Yeah, we don't deal in race hate. We're racist like the violin person. It's called a violinist. Excuse me. It's called a violinist. Like the cello person who plays the cello is called a celloist. We're about self. The issue with, which as all races are, according to natural nature. Yeah, the difference where we come together is we have to be concerned about the planet, concerned about the environment. We traded with other races when we was in our supreme prime. We just didn't allow people to live amongst us unless they were guests in a certain environment, because it always meant a denigration of our culture. And when we let the Caucasians in, what did they do? They took over from within. Insincere, you understand? Came in and brought down our structures from within, as they do, and then burnt down our sacred houses, libraries, and so on and so forth, so they could establish themselves as the authors, authority, and to decide what or what isn't authentic. Which is why now, instead of everything based upon 9 degrees, they're based upon 3 degrees. Yeah, because they created 2, and they were given 2 by us in those early teaching, those beginning of baby stages, and they created a 3rd. While we're trapped now in language, person, places, and things. Can't think of anything outside of nouns. So we have to understand the separation between these two, the spiritual and the atomic physical or physical world. You understand? And that's done through the principles of naught and ought. Nothingness is not nothing. I mean, i.e. non-existing. It's just particles that don't sum up to something to be weighed. Understood? So you have the world of things, and you have the world of some things. Now, in this society, they say the first point of existence starts with the hydrogen atom, all the way down to the 99th element, which is Einsteinium. But which they stole from the Muslims, who had the 99 attributes of Allah, who stole it from us as the ancient Egyptians, who had the 99 deities, grouped by way of the different elements: earth, water, wind, and fire. You understand? Because of the deities or the scientists that created that atom. Because they name their stuff after some of the discoveries, after the person they say discovered it. Ours is dealing with the scientists that formulated it. And there's a lot of power in the 99 elements. So that physical world, or as they would describe it as 1 to 99, is considered to be ought. But for us, it expands because subatomic particles are still things. But in this world, they're considered to be theoretical. But in our world, they're classified as things that make up the thing or the sum. Because the sun, as you see it physically birthed, started off its process in darkness first. It becomes detectable in space and time once it's birthed. As at one time, the birth of a human being was considered to be a mystery, isn't it? You understand? All the things that are taking place in it, you don't know until a certain event happens, i.e., your period or whatever doesn't come, or your belly starts showing. These are where things become detectable in space and time, but the process itself started off before then. We just didn't have the instrumentation to measure. We still don't have the instrumentation to measure. We log it at conception, don't we? And then they work out what your birthday's going to be, and then roughly they try and figure out when you conceive. But they're not taking place or dealing with what inception is, which is this darkness, which is what we now are getting back into, cause and effect. So ought and naught is two different things. We don't have a zero in our language conceptually. The zero came in with the Sumerians, who influenced the same by the Anunnaki. They brought in zeros. We don't have we have the term zero, i.e. Safu in the language, but when you get to 10, which is a combination of 1 and 0, we don't add a 0. We got a number for that, Ashu, and there's a symbol for 10. Because when you look at the 1 and the 0, it's really birthing or giving birth to a new dimension. If you think about it logically, 1 representing the phallus, and you think about the circle representing the egg, when they come together, it births a new environment, a new universe. So when you're looking at 10 is really birthing a new dimension. It's not adding a 0 to it as it's conceptually written. It's that because 0 is nothing in their thing. 0 means non-existent. If someone asks you, how many children do you have? You don't say 0 children, you just say, I don't have any children. So we didn't have a 0 like that in our language. Understood? Yeah, there was a symbol for it, but not adding a 1 and a 0 next to it. Because the 0 represents naught, but naught is the world of things. Quarks, biots, zeros. But really, because we understand they do exist, they should really be a thing, because they've become detectable now. So they should really, subatomic should really be ought. And then the level below subatomic is that thing that can't be weighed, neutrinos and different things of that. Gluons and bombs, these things which are so small, they're not detectable. Don't have an atomic weight, something that could be measured by modern day instrumentation. So broadly, this is a separation between what is being called physical and spiritual. Spiritual is still material, or it's still matter, even though it's energy. Yeah, because it's made up of particles. So when we're dealing with that side of things, it's not non-existent. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So when we're talking about spiritual, you understand, remember, we're not dealing with a belief system here. These things you have to seek confirmation of and understanding of, because they are tangible. Yeah, but it's being understood oftentimes through the symbolism of how our ancestors told certain stories. But now in this day and time, with your teacher or your warner being born in this day and time, you are being given it as it is and how it's supposed to be. They turned you off from maths, science, it's too hard, it's too difficult, blah, 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 blah. When even now, we have to be mathematicians, we have to be scientists in this day and time. I don't care how old you are. Learn biology, learn these different books. I'm not saying to say you must accept everything that they give in their book, but there are some basics or scientists that are more closer to facts than the belief systems are, if you want to understand the universe. Spirituality in this day and time is factual. It's not factual. And we have to use our reasoning ability as well as our spiritual exercise and faculties to push our mental or the connection to raise our imagination or our mind's eye to widen it. And it becomes wider when you know things. It becomes wider when you learn a language. You've got to get to think out of English. You understand? Can't understand the Mars universe in English. The tones and the language is not structured well enough to fit what we're doing. So we have to learn the new tones. This tie us back into nature. Understood? But primarily spiritual and physical. Yeah, alt and naught. Yeah, in terms of represented, etheric and physical. So you see here for every physical atom, there is its element. Excuse me. There is its etheric counterpart. Yeah, so when we talk about that, say E1 to E99 versus obviously hydrogen in this way down to Einstein. How they're classified as today. Yeah, for our understanding. Excuse me. And these first 9 elements are pivotal in the formation of a star or a sun. You understand? So, but it's intertwined, as we mentioned earlier. It's not levels like stacked above each other. Yeah? If that's helping to get your understanding of what is or what isn't out there. So, any questions? Any questions?
No questions.
Right. So when we talk about ourselves and getting a better understanding, some people might think, oh, I've read that, but what's it got? Oh, that's got to do with reflection and projection. Because we have to understand, as I say, what is happening internally. Reflection is dealing with the spiritual aspect of a person that is happening internally and being projected on the outside. Yeah, and this is why we're taking time to go through this in detail. Yeah, and stay with us; it will make sense in part 1 and 2. Part 2 definitely not to be missed. So we're looking at the 9 principles of who we are, and I'm not going to go through all of these unless people have got questions on them. But we're interested particularly in the Ka'ah here, and saying for the purposes of this class, yeah, the exoplasmic being. So ectoplasma is a substance, look it up, and in our case, it's what fills our universe up. So we are in a liquid universe. Do you understand? If you imagine it, the master teacher said, imagine the universe is, then obviously you put, fill up a bucket with water, you put soap in it, and so very liquid, whatever, and you excite the water, and you get all those bubbles, yeah, interconnected with each other or whatever. If you were looking at the multiverse from the outside in, that's what it would look like. So the universes are touched with different shapes, and where one touches on the border of another one, you get a black hole. Understood. So exoplasma is what fills up our universe. Do you understand? In terms of this substance that can be molded and shaped into many different types of, as I say, substances. Yeah. So the Ka'ah, is key. Remember we saw what the Ba'ah, the creative expressional being in that triad, the Ahah, the etheric being, and we saw the Ka'ah, understand, the exoplasmic being as the higher triad of us. Because we're looking at these 9 principles, maybe it's 3 times 3 in different environments. Understood? Yeah, but they only gave you 3, and we talked about earlier about them 2 creating a 3rd. Everything in the site is based around 3. Well, they only talk about body, soul, and spirit, but we have 9 principles of us, 2 souls. Yeah, the Rawah soul, or Rawah soul. Yeah, the breath of the living being. Breathing in oxygen, breathing out carbon dioxide. It's firing up, understood, our solar plexus, creating heat, that internal lit sun, the Rawah, the breath, understood? Yeah, but the Ba'ah is the higher aspect of that soul, as is the Nafas, which is the other spirits. You've got 2 spirits and 2 souls. The Nafas is the lower end of that, which is our DNA and our RNA. So our DNA contains our characteristics, our personality, and whatever we do in life is being recorded in our DNA and our RNA. What we breathe, what we eat, sleep, say, everything is being recorded. Yes, within our DNA and RNA. So your body is going to tell on you if you misuse it. When it comes to that point where you're in front of those elders or masters, yeah, trying to transition, yeah, we've got a nice record of everything we've all done in our physical body. It's recording everything. Yeah, we are feeding in to that mental reservoir of information as well as drawing from it. Understood. So, and keenly, the ninth is lamasat, or our senses. So how we are perceiving the world around us, it's through our senses, or the sense of touch. They're all a various derivative of the sense of touch or perception. Understood. But when we deal with the ka'a, this was its safuf or symbol. Understand? This is a burning process taking place in the lungs. So its purpose, I'm going to show you a bit of a diagram, basically is it feeds or ties into the mental reservoir, is able to draw down that outformation into our body by way of our mind. Yes? And so that's one of its aspects or purposes, is to connect us in to that mental reservoir, lock us in so that we can draw down, as I say, information. In outformation, when it comes in, it's called information into our mind, which is also known as mine, M-I-N-E, my individual portion of the mental reservoir, and it's the ka'a that facilitates that. As you see, the deity Satak is holding that ka'a symbol, understood? Which is that, as I say, the two hands shown upwards, and he's holding it in his hand, as you can see, difficult, and equivalent to what? The argon, which is number 18 on the periodic table, and his name is one of sound. So here, as I say, we see the 9 senses again, and we see the elements of us, I say, which transition, when it pertains to us, transition after the point of death. And where the DNA strands were stronger, we were able to incarnate up to 24 to 24,000 times, say, to master the physical. But obviously only being able to come back through your own bloodline. Some people who are on this call have been here and lived multiple lifetimes. In some cases, made to come back because they breached certain universal rules or natural rules. Others, because they chose to come back because they wanted to get a better grade, in inverted commas, before they transitioned up to higher states of existence. And some people, i.e. those born after 1970, they haven't been here before. They're new souls. So all are mastering this environment as part of your own ascension pathway, but part of that is also us being able to work together as one soul, many personalities or many spirits. So we see this diagram in terms of iteration of soul and spirits, and as we made reference earlier, we talk about emotions, we really talk about energy in motion. So the source of the energy for us in that, or what we're drawing down and then empowering for us, is the Ba'ah. In its active state, then that becomes the Rawa, or the motion side of it. Understood? So energy in motion is what you're saying when you say emotions or particles moving in darkness. Understood? Now, look at the DNA. So we see that the female side is associated with the mitochondrial DNA, and that is obviously carrying the legacy. So you must have a daughter to carry on your legacy. So the woman is carrying the genetic bloodline. This is why there's so much focus on the black woman, because basically she's carrying the royal genes. But in patriarchal societal teachings, you have to have a son to carry on your line, but obviously the rules of nature don't work like that, don't support that thinking. You understand? You understand about mitochondrial, and when the sperm, we've gone through many times, so look it up. The sperm hits the ovum or whatever, it is absorbed by the ovum. It's absorbed by the ovum, and the male DNA, or the male equivalent to the mitochondrial DNA, is in the tail of the sperm. The tail drops off and the mitochondrial DNA overwhelms that. So you must carry on. To carry on your line, you have to have daughters. I.e., if you want it from mother, generational to generation, you have to have a mother. You understand? Otherwise, if it's a male, then it just stops at that generation. That's the end of the family line, which is why you saw a lot of pharaohs having to marry. Sometimes if it was the male who sat on the throne, they got their royal seat, so to speak, by way of their wife. Because it's the wife's genetics or genes that carry the royal bloodline all the way back connected to Panatharu. Yeah, because of the first beings or seed here that evoluted out of the waters would be the ones connected to our deities. Understood? And so that line or whatever that carries through is referred to as one's soul seed. So we see that again, past is female and future is male. You understand? Arguably, the future to some degree is already written. It is the past that we're seeking to change by changing our behavior now to alter our potential self-destruction if we carry on the way we're carrying on as a race. Yeah, and so that's why we go back into the past to make the changes necessary that will alter our fate. Yeah. So, not to dwell on this too much, but we have to understand what spirit means to us in this day and time, and what spirit to us is not ghost. Understand? Spirit to them is ghost. Spirit to us is part of, as I say, the connected counterpart to the physical, understood, and is linked to the soul and the ether or the achach. You understand? Our soul, if it looked at it from a certain perspective, is made up of many ka'as, or spirits. And at the point of death, they shatter, yeah, based on like a piece of broken glass. It shatters and it gravitates to the dimension where the person's last thoughts or thinking was. So we can find ourselves, if we're not careful, or controlling those aspects of us, find ourselves existing on lower realms, and then we become a battery for 6 ether or adverse forces. And some of our ancestors are trapped, or the energy of them is trapped in these lower states. And by us reconnecting with Wu-Sabat, we have to be their saviors, and so to pull all of our aspects of self out of those lower realms so they can exist on 7, 8, and 9 ether, where there is only agreeable or positive energy, as opposed to adverse, destructive, chaos energy from 1 all the way up to 6 ether. Yes? Now, what time we got there? I think we're almost done for part 1. So let me try and finish on a logical point. Let's just see where we're at. Okay. Right. Okay. So I'm going to end here because I think we'll be past 4:30. So I want to keep you on the phone too long. So we'll continue this in part 1. So what you can do in preparation for part 2, you can study holograms. Yes, because when we're talking about the brain, we need to understand that the brain is a hologramic computer, and you need to have some understanding of where the image is being generated from. Reflection, clue. And then what is appearing outside of you? Projection, clue. How does that work? Yeah, these are questions to ask yourself. How does it work? Are we really looking outward, or are we looking inward? Where is the picture being generated from? And if we think about the makeup of who and what you are, can those images that you're seeing, or the perspective of those images that you're seeing, be controlled by forces within you? If you think about your ancestors and what you are made up of, you're thinking you're an individual, which is correct, but you're also a collective based on 30 personalities, which we'll get into in the next class. So what are those images being generated from that we are seeing, and do we have control? If we don't have control, how do we get control? Because are those images of what we're seeing having an adverse impact on our lives moving forward? Or taking control of our fate moving forward? These are all interesting points, but it's based on unraveling or dismantling the spiritual ignorance. You understand? Too much in the various different religions, things are not well explained. They're not detailed enough for our understanding. What is a soul? What is spirit? What are these things? What do they do? How do they power? How do they work? What happens to them after death? You need to know these things. There's a whole industry on how the physical body works, how it should be given nutrition. If you want the six-pack, want this, want that. It's a whole industry there. But the same detail is not there for the spiritual side. Other than prayer, meditation, basic things of that nature. But fundamental principles, if you do not understand how the universe works, where is that energy being directed to? The universe is a big place with lots of different things and some things within it. If you connect with the wrong things, it can be detrimental. Yeah, and so some of this stuff may challenge very well long-held beliefs. But who said this journey that we're on was going to be easy? Yeah? So, let's stop at that particular point. Any burning questions before we go? So boom. Any burning questions before we go?
I don't see any here.
Okay, all right. So, let me just let's not go into that. Let me just pull up. Just one moment. Let me just pull up. So the next class is on the 19th, I believe, of July. I'm just going to pull up them details so I can find that. So that's in 2 weeks' time. Yeah. If you've already registered or you've attended one of the part ones, the part twos, I should say, then you don't need to re-register again. So it'll automatically send you an invite. If you've only registered for part one and not part two, then what you need to do is register separately for part two. If you don't have those details, then let us know so we can furnish you with that information, so you can register for part one, or just hit our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. So to get to the YouTube channel, all you got to do is go on YouTube, All Eyes on Egypt. That's Egypt with an I, Midlands in the north, and that will, as I say, tap you into our YouTube channel. Let me just get to this slide and I can put it on the screen. Might be easier for people to take a picture of it. There we go. Okay, so that's the details, say, of the next class. So 19th of July. Yeah. Might help if I put the right date on there. I think it's 19th. Let's just double check that. So 19th of July, yeah, 2 weeks' time. Should be 19, not 1. Reflection and Projection Part 2. And as I say, All Eyes on Egypt, Midlands in the North for the YouTube channel. Registration as well for Part 2 is also there. So it'll be in the description if, as I say, you're not registered for Part 2. Yes, you need to be registered separately for Part 1 and Part 2. And a recording of this class will be available, I suppose, in the next week or so on that channel. Yeah. So anything else before we close? Yeah? If not, So thank you to those joining us today on Facebook, and thank you to you all who've joined us on chat. Hopefully you found it interesting. Go away, research, look into the various different subjects that we've covered today. As I say, part 2 will bring some conclusions. Lot to cover. And it will definitely be worth it. So please join us for part 2. Again, good to have pen, paper, because we will have some reflective quizzes in there. And as I say, anything that you think of that you can't answer or question comes up, then you've got an email address that was registered when you sent to you when you registered. Let's get the words out. Sent to you when you registered. All Eyes in Egypt, mn@aol.com. Can send any questions in the meantime to that email address. Okay. I do remember there was a request to see Pastor Shan symbol, wasn't there? Right. How can we do that now? Bear with me one moment. Okay, so this was, I think, for Jean, who wanted to see the Pasashan symbol. Interesting enough. Let me just see if I can get my camera the right way around. Right, let's see. Can you see my camera? Sorry, hold on a minute. Can you see my camera? Sorry, hold on a minute. Can you see my camera?
I can see. I can't see a camera. I can't see a live camera.
Okay.
Now I can see. Now I can see a camera. It's upside down.
Okay, let's. So somebody asked to see the symbol of 1,000 that we were talking about earlier. Yeah, this is the.
Out of focus.
Not asking for a lot, are you?
There you go. There you go.
Is that in focus? Is that better?
It's much better. I think it could be slightly better. I think you did have it a little bit better before.
Let me just. I'm looking at a small screen here. Can't see.
Oh, I see.
Properly. Okay.
There you go. We can see it. There you go. There you go.
Okay. So can you see that? That is the. Excuse me. It's called Pasashan symbol, and it was the, as I say, the safuf for the symbol of 1,000. Now, I think M. You think about in Roman numerals, it is M is also the symbol, I think, for 1,000, if memory serves me correctly. But it has the sound M, like an EM sound, which is the word of. Yeah, so in our language, in Sabaik, it means of, yeah. But it's of when you're using it in connection with human beings or people, understood? Yeah, as opposed to things in that regard. So you can see the symbol there, yeah, the lotus flower. So on that side of things. So they call it, so it's the perfect, they consider it to be the perfect number. For the reasons, obviously, we expressed in class, yeah, with the 3 orbs, yeah, connected to the number. So 99 plus 1, and the reason why it's plus 1 is because really the number 1 is a composite, isn't it? You understand? Because we should have learned the periodic table before we learned the mathematical system. Because you need to know how 1 transforms into 2. You understand? So when you get to 99 plus 1, it's the plus 1 element that's helping to transform it, isn't it, into the next dimension. There's a transformation taking place, or a linkage. It's not an independent switch like 1, 2. It's something is transforming into something else. Understood? Yeah. So this is that Pasashan symbol blown up. For you. Okay, I see there's a question, so let's just take that just before we close out. Oh, you couldn't see it. Does it look like you could? I was trying to raise my hand, but it looks like you could not see it. So Hamtat, if you've got a question, you want to ask it? I don't know. Can you come to... you want to ask that question before we close out? Meb, seems like there's a couple of questions there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
You've just been unmuted.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, the one with the tick on the top of the clock.
Yes.
You were saying there's 3 parts to that. I got the one when you said the moment was the rest, but I didn't get the other 2.
Sorry, say that again. I just missed that. Last part.
You were describing the tick and the tock of the clock.
Yes, correct. Yes.
And you were describing each part, and I think you said part of it was called the rest. In the rest, it was called the moment. Am I right?
Yeah, so basically, you got tick, tock, and then the space in between is referred to as the rest.
Yes. So what's the tick called and what's the tock called?
Excuse me. So basically we have, we have dark matter, dark energy, and we have something referred to as dark hold, which is space, matter, and time. Understood? Let's revert back to part 1 for a second just to show you that spacing. I'm going to see on that. Choose. And basically the reason for that, as I say, the way that structure is set up is because, as I say, that triad principle, it basically, as I say, it works as a system throughout existence. You understand? These 3 principles of how physical things is set up. You understand? So whenever you're thinking physical existence, you have to think space, matter, and time. You understand? In terms of those elements. So there we go here. So moments is going to be the tock, material is tick, and then the dark energy is your rest.
Sorry, the moment is...
So moments, or the tock is moments. So our time is based upon firsts. It's not based upon seconds. So when somebody says moments, it's also, you see in the time system, firsts, as opposed to seconds. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yeah.
Then within that time, understood, you have matter. So matter is making the imprint. Understood, So because time is obviously based on things happening, it's events. It's not the class started. We said class starts at 1 o'clock, but until I come on and say, "Hey, Robat," or "Greetings, everybody," that is when class starts. Understood? So it's when the event happens, as opposed to the system of recording time, if that makes sense. So that takes place within matter, i.e., boom, I've made the sound. The soul portion really exists in the rest part. You understand? Which is where the energy comes from. So when a person's playing music, understood, and I don't know, they're tapping the beat of the drum, they really feel it in the part where the drum's not being played. You understand? Someone plays musical instruments, they might feel it in the space before they hit the note, because that's where the soul exists in that part. You understood? Or that Ba'ah, the energy, exists in that part of things. You understand? Person, you're feeling that thing and timing, and this is why this combination of all of it. When they say a person has soul, it's talking about the fact that we're able to sync in with that vibrational rhythm. Move throughout those vibrations, and it describes a connection with that source information, as long as we stay in control of things. If we're not in control and our decisions are being made by other influencing forces, then we lose that connection. So if I'm on, not me personally, but if a person's on addicted to heroin and a slave then to, you know what I mean, the desire for heroin, or the addiction to heroin is driving their decision making, they'll lose their soul. Understood? Because the connection's broken. The decisions are no longer coming from the source. They're no longer coming from the top, i.e. you, in that control and influence. It's been influenced by, you know what I mean, carnal desires. So that's why it can be restored. It's like a connection. It's like restoring somebody's telephone line again. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. Is that answer your question?
Yes, it has.
Okay.
And there was one thing. There's another question I wanted to ask about I can't pronounce this word properly, but I think it's the morphogenetic field.
Morphogenetic field, yes, correct. Yeah.
For a Sabaean, if I'm trying my hardest to live the Wu-Sabatic lifestyle, and my nearest and dearest, like my children, are not following suit, but all my efforts are going up to this field, does that mean that my future generations, maybe my grandchildren, will benefit from what I've done through the field? Or is it just like a field where all your good efforts, all your efforts, bad or good, will just affect the being race? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think so. I'll do my best. So basically, remember, what is best for the individual is not always best for the race, and what is best for the race is always best for the individual. So the fact of the matter is, people have their. You're connected to the morphogenetic field because that's who you are by race. So you feeding information into it is benefiting, I suppose, the race if you're feeding the right type of information, or you're developing yourself in the right way in line with Parnatharu divine design, then yes, that's of benefit. Obviously, if your children are not following what you are doing or making that growth, then obviously that's your legacy. They carry the future, isn't it? So your future genes. So an aspect of you is still in them, isn't it? An aspect of you is forward. That's also part of our soul. Insofar as your children are you, do you like what you see? Now, it may be in a certain point in time where they do acquiesce or gravitate towards what nature or their ancestors have set out for them. I mean, you can't control that. Children got their own mind, so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, you've got your own soul and your own direct connection. You can only control what the actions that you take and do. Obviously, you can only do your best with your children, but you can't force them. They have their own minds. They've got their own decision-making process, so on and so forth. So it's not a thing, if I think I'm getting your question, where because if your children don't make it, then that's the end of, or they don't decide to follow in your footsteps or whatever, that me contributing to the field is helping. At the end of the day, you're going to be judged at a certain point by yourself as a soul on your own. You're not going to be judged based on your children, this, that, so on and so forth. Obviously, what you did and how you raised them and what the decisions you made to influence them may be a factor, but you're going to be judged on your actions. And when that happens, you stand alone. You understand? So they're not looking at, she contributed positively to the field. It's just a case of, did you master certain things while you're here in the physical life? You understand? And therefore, are you ready to transition? To higher states. You know what I mean? Where you could be sent to, somewhere else where you're the teacher. You know what I mean? To develop people, to sink them in. But or you may decide that, you know what, I want to go and just experience what it's like to be a son, or I want to go and experience what it's like to live on other planets or other worlds. Remember, you are part of all, and through your eyes and perception, you're growing those experiences. But the ability to have access to that is what you're working towards. You understand? To prove yourself worthy, to be allowed back into being able to travel to various places. We've lost that, and we're trapped within this prison called planet Earth. Yeah. So
thank you for that. Yeah.
Overstood. Okay. Last question then.
There's another question from Dwamutef. Dwamutef, your mic is unmuted, so unmute your microphone.
Okay. Rahub. Yes. Just a quick question. Part 1 and part 2 of this class and other classes, do they carry 2 different ID numbers to enter?
They would do, because they're 2 separate events.
Okay, because I had a little problem getting into this class because I was using part 2 ID number. So that's explained it for what was happening. Thank you.
Understood. Yeah. If you click the link, then I mean, use that. Well, I would click the link because all those things are inherent in the link. You don't have to worry about the ID. So if you click the link for the original registration, keep it safe. Your original registration for part 1, and then keep the link for the original registration for part 2. When you click the link, it just takes you in. You don't have to worry about putting in IDs or passwords or things of that nature. So that if that makes life easier for you, just keep your registration email safe, and you get reminders as well for the different parts. So let's say first part is always first Sunday of the month, and then second part is always the third Sunday of the month. Yeah, but they do have 2 separate IDs number. You are correct. Yes, is that the final one in the list? Is that the final one?
I don't see any further questions.
Okay, right. Okay. So, let's say 19th, yeah, 19th, if I'm correct, is the next class. At the same time, we have a lot to cover, so it might go on a little bit longer than 4:30. I'll do my best, but as I say, want to kind of get these points on. So remember, a little bit of homework, our own work for you. Look at holograms and look at how your eyes work. Yeah, we will cover it next class, but it may give you some insight into that might be useful for you. Okay, really appreciate everybody for joining us, and thank you for staying on longer than, as I say, we're at 4:30 finish. Much appreciated, and we will see you all on the 19th. Tawakum, which means thank you all in our language, and take care.
Wadu.
Wadu.
Wadu. Wadu.